are listening to another edition of JetX Live. I think we can call it. I don't know if it's Blue It Splits or if it's JetX Live, but that intro means it's JetX Live. So I'm here with one Mr. Michael Nania, as you can see. Michael, what is up?
I'm doing good. Just enjoying that Knicks win from yesterday. I know you're still reeling from that Nets opener.
Yep.
So good vibes for me right now.
Yeah, I'm really nervous that the Nets aren't going to make the playoffs now. I'm really concerned. Yeah, and I like I said, I've heard it from a couple of Knicks fans already talking crap that the Knicks are 1-0 and the Nets are 0-1. But enjoying the bye week, Devils 2-0, and then now Jack Hughes is out indefinitely because he took a hit. I'm hoping I've seen indefinitely mean 2-3 weeks. I've seen indefinitely mean 4 months. So I'm still pretty concerned because he's probably the best or second best player on the team. What is up, Mike, Brian, Daniel, Knicks? Obviously, with no game to talk about, Knicks is really struggling in our fantasy league. Actually, we were talking about fantasy a little bit before the CD. I think Knicks is 0-5 or 0-6 right now. So, yeah. So we're going to lean into the chat more than we usually do this one because there's really not that much to talk about. We're going to talk about some of the trade deadline stuff, who we like to see as targets for the Jets, ways to fix the Jets offense, or at least ways we believe they can, expectations going forward. We're going to talk about a couple different things, but definitely get into the chat because, again, there's not too much to discuss. But Daniel Cerner is already saying ouch. So I don't know what that maybe talking about Jack Hughes already. But Michael, I guess we can start off with let's do the thing that happened just today, just really quickly, because it's like a little side note that the Jets fans bullied the Jets into
Yep.
changing their decision about wearing white on green. Because as soon as I tweeted that, I think everybody in the fan base thought we were going to lose, and you put out some good stats about the Jets and how many games they've won in the last 10 years with that jersey combo. So, what do you think about the Jets brass kind of giving it to peer pressure?
Yeah, that was hilarious. I guess it's proof that bullying works, you know. You can get what you want when you bully someone online, especially if it's a billionaire team owner. But I kind of feel like I started the chain reaction a little bit because I put that out before he announced the white on green for this game. And then he put it out, and people were talking about how they never win in it because I put out the exact stat that they've only won. They're 1-9 since in the new uniforms in white on green. They were 0-8 the 2 years before that, 2017 and 18. So it's been bad. And then he comes out today and he's like, we're switching it. We're switching to white on white. But like you told me before this, the reason the inspiration for me putting that stat out was when you pointed out during the Falcons game. You were just like, side note, when was the last time the Jets won in the white on
Yeah,
green? So that's why I kind of researched it. So I think we have you to thank
and
for
I think
the uniform switch.
and listen, the Jets haven't won a lot in any jersey combo, but and the two games they've won in the last 9 years, whatever you said, was the 49ers game, correct? You put
Yep.
out, and then there was one other game, and I forget what that
The
one was.
Washington 2019.
Okay, so that was the only
Yeah.
legitimately good game. Was Washington, because I was there for that one, and the Jets actually played pretty well that game. Jamal Adams played well. Sam Darnold played well. I think that was like Ryan Griffin's breakout game or one of his really good games
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
Washington. I could be wrong. Some in the chat, and we can get into this in a minute too. May and a fourth for Cody Ford. He's been a healthy scratch. I don't know how Cody Ford's been playing this year. Obviously, not very well if he's been a healthy scratch. But why would we want a guy who's a healthy scratch? I think May, while his value might have taken a little bit of a dip with some of the recent transgressions in his life, or maybe not so recent, but recent to the Jets because he didn't report it. I still think he's more valuable than I think he's about a fourth round pick. So your time you trade 2/4 for Cody Ford. I don't think that would be the case for me personally. But getting into that, Nani, what do you think in terms of his value? Do you think he stays? Because there's been some comments in the last couple of hours. People are saying he wants to stay here now, and he's saying he wants to stay here. So what's your kind of general vibe on the scenario and what his trade value is right now?
Yeah, I still feel like a deal is going to be made. Just it feels inevitable that he's not going to be staying around next year. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem like he has, regardless of what he said today, it doesn't seem like he has any interest in staying around with, the tweet that his agent put out, his open comments in the offseason about how he didn't like how negotiations went. So it doesn't seem likely he's going to stay. So, and it doesn't seem like the Jets want to pay him what he's going to be demanding, and they're not going to franchise tag him a second time to up close to 13 million next year. So I think they're going to see what they can get and take it within these next couple of weeks. The only thing that I think does make it more difficult is the lack of depth at safety with Joyner's injury. That's been their worst defensive position, with May out, with Joyner out. So that's the only thing. Do they want to maybe keep him around just to keep the defense stabilized for the next 12 games? But I think ultimately they're going to find something to do with him for within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and trade deadline is November 2nd. So it's 2 days after the Halloween game against the Bengals, which the Jets better be wearing black. I wish we could be there for that, but I unfortunately can't. Now with Marcus May, you just wrote an article on some options that you believe that they can dump him to. So what are some like the teams that you feel like Marcus May would be a valuable asset to? Because at this point you figure, okay, 28 years old. Usually teams who are making trades are kind of going for it at this point. So I know you broke down at least a few teams who are struggling at safety right now. So who are some teams that you believe that they could trade him to?
Yeah, so I think there are a few AFC teams that make sense. One of them is Cleveland. They've had a lot of struggles defensively at safety. And I really think they are a team that, they're trying to win now. They're kind of falling out of the race a little bit. They're 3-3. We'll see what they are after tonight with their starting quarterback out. So they've had major issues at safety, and they could definitely be a team looking to make that move. Kansas City's another one that has been awful defensively, and it all starts at safety for them too. They obviously have Tyrann Mathieu, but Daniel Sorensen next to him has been maybe the worst safety in the league in terms of his numbers. So that's another contender that could be looking to upgrade that position. Then the Colts are another one. The Jets and Colts are very consistently involved in trades the past few years. The Colts aren't necessarily a win now team in terms of how good they are, but they also don't have their first round pick next year. They kind of are a win now team, even though they're not playing like it. They're invested in winning, and they have safety issues as well. So those are three teams I think make sense. Some people brought up Tampa Bay because of the Todd Bowles connection, and I think that's possible, but they're much better off at safety than some of these other teams. I think the Colts, Browns, and Chiefs are teams that are pretty desperate at safety and also in that win now sort of mode. And the Chiefs also have who I brought up in a different article as a potential trade target. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, their backup guard, could make sense for the Jets to replace Greg Van Roten for some short-term help there. So
is that the guy who has like the PhD?
Yep.
Or is that not that's the guy? Yeah. And I'll get to the questions in the chat really in a second because I just want to follow up with this because you mentioned the Bucks. A lot of stuff's been swirling around Twitter about targets that the Jets could have or be searching for at tight end right now because that's been obviously we're going to talk about the offense and what's been the problem. We've been talking about the offense and what's been the problem, and it's some combination of lack of talent or talent not really shining through at certain times. The tight ends, LaFleur, etc. But tight ends is undoubtedly one of the reasons they've been struggling. A lot of people have been talking about OJ Howard. Would you do Marcus May for OJ Howard straight up, or kind of what are your feelings on OJ Howard?
I feel like that there'd have to be a little bit more with Howard. Don't you think? You said you think he's Marcus May is a 4th round value. Mm-hmm. So I would say Howard is probably a 5th or 6th round value. So
yeah,
maybe May for Howard in the 5th, something like that.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking about that. I think a lot of people kind of have, again, their last memory of him is him being like a top 10 pick or near the top 10, maybe top 16 pick out of Alabama, and he was absolutely dominant. And there was a bunch of like not like documentaries, but like people following him around and his training and all this stuff and how crazy athletic he was. He's like the next Kyle Pitts. Like that was a little bit less than Kyle Pitts, but he was up there with the Kyle Pitts and TJ Hawkinsons and all of this. So I think people are kind of thinking that is what Howard is with the Bucks, and obviously he's buried in the depth chart. Like when Gronk is healthy, when Brate's healthy, he's the number. I think Brate's still there, right? Or no, I think he might have got traded.
Yeah, he's still there.
Okay, he is still there. So he's the number 3.
Yep.
And even if not, he would be the number 2 to Gronkowski. So I think that people are overvaluing OJ Howard, who's on his last year of his deal. So you have to look at how he fits. how quick does he learn the system because he's coming into a completely different system with the Jets? Does he resign? So I think you're looking at like a 6th-round pick for Howard. So I think the Buccaneers would have to throw in a little bit to get Marcus May because, again, minus kind of the Jets and the Jets fans maybe wanting to clean their hands a little bit of Marcus May because he's getting a little bit old at this point. I still think people have to look at it and try to get the most we can and not just dump him off for a tight end who hasn't really done too much in the last 3-4 years that he's been in the NFL. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely kind of hanging on to potential from, I mean, OJ Howard himself is going to be 27 this year. So, potential only lasts so long. He's in his 5th season. And, the Bucs felt comfortable pulling Rob Gronkowski out of retirement. They signed Cameron Brate to a long-term deal despite drafting Howard in the top 20. So obviously there's some potential there. And I think he is better than what they have for sure. But definitely, I think, there would have to be some compensation coming with him in a May trade.
Yeah. What's up? WA 2K99. I seen it before. I was just asking if I can call him 2K because it's I don't know why those words those letters in a row just do not come out of my mouth cleanly. What's up, Mike? I see you in here. Lund Baxter says, "Hey guys, regarding Mims playing time, at what point does game performance outweigh how he looks in practice? What do you think?"
Who was that? I didn't hear.
It's Lund Baxter. He says, "Hey guys, regarding Mims getting playing time, at what point? Yeah, what point does game performance outweigh how he looks in practice?"
Yeah, I think the last game is definitely a good step up because once again he didn't play that much and he still made a couple of big catches, or at least the one. I know he had a second catch after that, but I think Jeff Smith is coming back this week too, so that's gonna shake it up a little bit. Jets fans aren't gonna be happy if Jeff Smith is getting snaps over him. So I think that we are getting to the point where, especially coming out of the bye week, where they have the chance to sit back and evaluate, look at what's worked, what hasn't worked. I think now is a good opportunity for them to kind of take a look at, the fact that I think Mims can offer more than even Keelan Cole. Like I like Keelan Cole a lot, but he's a very solid all-around player who I think what you're getting, whereas Mims, has untapped upside to potentially be much more than what Keelan Cole is. So I think it is a chance for them to kind of maybe be a little bit more willing to take a risk, give Mims some more playing time and see what he can do with it.
Yeah, Cole's kind of like he's like a jack of all trades, like master of none type guy. Like he could do pretty much everything you want, but he's not like a true threat where you put Mims in the game. Like you have to account for a guy who I know he ran like a 4.3, but it's legitimately it's probably like a higher 4.4, but is 210 plus pounds, 215, whatever it is, and 6'3", 6'4", running over the middle, who has an absurd catch radius. So you have to account for that. And again, I'd like to see them use him a little bit more. And some like the comments from LaFleur too, and we'll talk about LaFleur in a little bit, but in terms of his stubbornness, not using certain personnel packages, again, being high in 12 personnel is at this point, I know you're not going to completely change the offense, but drop it at least a little bit and put that more to 10 and 11, because we all talk about the offense and the strength of the offense being the receivers. So you want to get those receivers on the field. So that being Mims, Elijah Moore, and had to be during the bye week, but during the bye week, you had LaFleur come out and say, Salah came out and said, we want to get, Elijah Moore more involved. And I think there's another player more involved, but we're not on the field enough to get them more involved. And a lot of fans came back with, and I get it, and I like Salah, but that answer is kind of bogus to me, because if you want to be on the field more, you think you get the ball in your players' hands, who are going to convert those first downs and keep the chain moving. So I've been a little bit frustrated with the personnel usage. That's undoubtable. But moving on to more of the chat, and this is a good one because we talked about this right by JFM. We're close with the JFM contract. I think I said like max of like 14. I signed for 13 and a half, and I think I guessed like 12. But we were pretty close on that, and that was fantastic. That broke literally while we were talking about it. But Mike asked a question that we were talking about right after that. Do you re-sign Foley now? Like, because you obviously he's a leader of the locker room. He's one of the best run stuffing nose tackle in the league. I'd have to look through a legitimate list, but actual nose tackles, not defensive tackles, I would say he's probably number 2 to Vita Vea in the league right now, in terms of what he offers at the nose tackle position, like a true zero. But you have to consider with that. Now you're paying JFM. You have Carl Lawson on a relatively big contract. Quinton Williams is coming up soon. You have Sheldon Rankins next year. So do you re-sign Foley? What's the price? Or do you look to maybe dump him before the trade deadline and get probably some good value? Because again, he's one of the better young run stuffing nose tackles in the entire league.
Yeah, I think I'm in the camp of re-signing Foley just because I think to have obviously the question mark is, like you said, now if you do re-sign him, you have 4 defensive linemen locked up to, 8-figure contracts. And obviously that is a little bit of a question, but I think, it's okay to do that, to sign a lot of players one position if you know what you're getting in those players. And I think you are. Carl Lawson is great. Franklin Myers is at this point proving that he is going to be great consistently. Quinn Williams, we know, is great. Foley, we know, is great. So yes, they're all the same position, but all those guys healthy together, like this is already a top 5 to 10 D line the way they're playing this year. You throw Carl Lawson in, it's probably top 3, maybe the best, legitimately. Mm-hmm. So if you can be getting that, that you're going to be getting your money's worth, then I think it's definitely worth it. And it also, I think defense works front to back a lot more so than the other way around. And then you have that defensive line locked in, and it makes it a lot easier to move guys around in the secondary, draft players and plug them in, like we're seeing this year with rookies playing well behind that really good pass rush, scrap heap guys at linebacker, safety, whatever. And you have that defensive line locked up. So I think it is okay to pay all those guys, and Foley is more than good enough to warrant a pretty substantial deal. So, and especially he is a good fit in the scheme to where, he could still provide his run stuffing, 2-gap, penetrate, muddy up run plays, but he also is not a terrible pass rusher. If he gets caught on the field in a passing play, he can explode and shoot gaps and create penetration. Like a Snacks Harrison would not be able to play in this defense. As great as he is in the run game, he does 0 as a pass rusher. But a guy like Foley can do, make a similar impact in the run game, but also still has enough athleticism and explosiveness to create as a pass rusher too. So I think he's a great scheme fit also. So I am in favor of keeping him around.
And even if he doesn't completely win on some of those one-on-one reps, he definitely pushes the pocket. He pushes the center 5 yards back, and the quarterback has nowhere to step up into, which obviously makes the job a lot easier on the edge rushers. And in terms of a price, I think we both agreed $8-9 million. We'd feel like we'd probably land him. And the thing with the Jets, you have to consider, it's not necessarily a situation, or definitely not a situation where they're the Browns, where their roster is stacked, where it's one or the other. A lot of these contracts, you really break it down, and it might say 4 or 5 years, but a lot of them are really 2-3 year deals. So pay your talent now, because the Jets are lacking at talent, and then in the future, let's say year 4 of Wilson, if Foley's on year 3 and you can get rid of him because you want to bring in whoever at maybe corner who hits the market, you could trade him, get some assets, or cut him, let him walk, whatever, get a comp pick, and then trade that guy. But I don't want to just get rid of talent because we need other positions. It's not like we're a stacked roster, and it's okay, well, we have to pay, whoever, Jalen Ramsey or Foley Fadokasi. It's we don't really have, we're not stacked right now. So moving on though, and I agree with you. I would sign him.
I think it is tough though, because I think we both agree that that 8-9 range fits in well with the money that they have doled out and will with Quinnen. But looking at some of the top nose tackle salaries, I feel like he could get more than that. DJ Reader is the top, I think, pure nose tackle inside guy right now at $53 million over 4 years. Eddie Goldman, 42 over 4 years.
Okay.
Stewart, so 30 over 3. So 10 million is probably the minimum with him.
Okay.
At the leaderboard.
Okay. So now we get into the conversation of what is your minimum? Because we said the same thing with JFM, and we were pretty close. What's your minimum you're going to pay for Foley? And this is considering Q's deal is coming towards the end of the year. And if not towards the end of the year, then during the offseason. So you have to consider that's another.
He's probably going to be north of 20.
I'm going to say 20 million. You'd say probably for Q. Obviously, he has to continue to play well. And last game, the defensive line was a little bit disappointing. I don't think they were terrible, but they were a little bit disappointing. But still, if Q, based on his trajectory right now, he's going to end up near 10 sacks for a defensive tackle. And like you said too, with the defensive line, if they do bring Carl Wilson will be back, but if he's like 90% of what he was, this is legitimately, it could be a top 3 line, top 5 line. It could be the best some weeks in terms of pressures and hits and how they actually play. So it'd be really exciting. But at what point do you say no? Because there has to be a certain point where you're not going to want to re-sign Foley.
Yeah. It's tough. It's because looking at this leaderboard, I feel like there could be some team that's willing to just shell out 12, 10 million. Dalvin Tomlinson got 2 years, 21 million. And I would say Foley's better than him. He's really good, but Foley still is probably better. Mm-hmm. It's going to be tough to fit him in there. I'd say 11 max. What do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say 11, or it can't be 12. Yeah, 11, because like at a certain point you have to also consider that while he's great when he's on the field, but especially when Lawson comes back on the field, he's not going to play as much. Like what is he at right now? Like 50% of the snaps?
Right now, pretty much 50-50.
So if he was a full-time player, you're looking at a guy, making, complement that or kind of spread that out. If he was playing full-time reps, that's like an 18, 19, $20 million player. I don't think he's that, if he were to play full reps. So yeah, I would say 10, 11 is the max I'm going. I'm curious to see if anybody in the chat responds to that. But while I love Foley, at a certain point, it's obviously too much. So we have Federico Serrano. He says, "Hey guys, I'm from Mexico and I'll be attending my first game ever next week. Halloween, that's pretty fun. I wonder if people are going to dress up. Hope the Jets put on a good game against Cincy. I know tailgating is a must. I just have no clue how tailgates work. Any tips?" I don't know your tailgating situation. I could say bringing food and beer is a very good option. Having a DD is also a very good option if you're not familiar with just a designated driver. So you can drink as much as you want. I would say get there at 8. Let the beers just kind of start flowing naturally, just really slowly, then build it up, because if you get there like 11, you have to start shotgunning and stuff. It doesn't go down as well. I get there early. I like that. Have a pork roll in the morning. But if you're going there and you don't have a car, which again, car, you bring the grill, you bring the cornhole, whatever you got. If not, I know 2 specific who I'm fine with promoting. Gotham City Crew does a tailgate you could look up, and it's like $50, like all inclusive with beer and food and all that stuff. And there's also Jet Nation, which is like I think around $50 too, and it's the same type of deal. So if you don't have a car, I recommend those 2 places, and you can go and meet some people and drink and have some good food. Now, I don't know if you have any. I don't think you can give it. You haven't been enough games that have any.
I don't have enough experience. I'm still a rookie.
I would. If I were there, I would love to say stop by my tailgate, and then we'll show you what a good tailgate's like. But I am not going to be there because I'm not able to. But we have the Jets bus, we have the flat screen TV, we have cornhole, we have multiple grills, we have the works at the tailgate I go to. So I would say find a Gotham City Crew or Jet Nation if you don't have a car. If not, and it depends what kind of person you are, because sometimes I have opportunities like that too, and I just kind of like just hanging out with my friends, and doing that instead of like trying to drink and play cornhole and like every 2 seconds, like, hey, what's up? Or talking to this guy or talking to that guy. I don't know who he is. And then, I rather not. But moving on, Mula131 says, I say the way Douglas gets value, he can get a third for May straight up. Mula, I agreed with you. And I said that before all this stuff happened with DWI, that I think he could get maybe even a second because of how he fleeces teams, but was leaning more towards a third. But now with this whole DWI thing happening, with him not reporting it to the league, there's most likely going to be suspension. I don't know if you've heard any inklings of what that could be, but let's just say it's 4 games, next year, it's going to be something, undoubtedly. So you're looking at a rental, potentially, unless they sign him long-term. And if you already sign him again, now he's suspended. So do you think there's any way it's possible for them to get a third, Anya, or do you think it's 4th is the absolute highest? Or do you see, because again, Joe Douglas traded Herndon and a 6th for a 4th, and Herndon, does he even have a catch yet? The Vikings, maybe 1 catch.
He had that catches? 1 touchdown in the game this week, wide open.
Oh, that's he did have a touchdown. Yeah. Okay. So, but it's still, if he can get a 4th for Herndon, and we've seen him fleece other teams in terms of trades. Again, Jamal Adams is a classic example. 2 first-round picks, and a 3rd, right? And McDougal, then we gave him Jamal Adams and a 4th, I believe it was. Yep. And Jamal Adams that was another great part of the bye week, which we didn't open the show with, which we probably should have. The fact that the Panthers lost, the fact that the Seahawks lost, and the
Finns, Pats,
Finns,
Bills,
Pats,
Giants.
yeah, Giants, yeah. So yeah, look at that. So it was a good bye weekend. It was nice to see, even though the Panthers scared the shit of me because the Vikings couldn't get the field off the field on fourth down that last drive. But do you think there's any way they can get a third, or do you think fourth's the highest?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this new situation definitely hurts his value a little bit just because it's uncertain in the future. You don't know what's going to happen. So I think it probably knocks him down around value. But I did think he had second round potential just because, I mean, you compare what he's done to Herndon, who got a fourth.
Yeah.
Technically it was a pick
Mhm.
swap because they gave the six as well. But,
Yeah.
he's a, fifth year every game starter, maybe borderline top 10 free safety with position versatility between both spots. So I think he has second round potential, but with this, probably I would say third right now is my guess.
Yeah, I would say four. I would say a fourth straight up is my guess, but
Yeah,
I could see a third. But I don't know about a second. SS says LaFleur's says lack of execution in quotes has led to the offensive struggles. Lack of execution is just a nice way to say playing like shit. Jets keep using euphemisms, Jesus, to hide their incompetence. Yeah, it's lack of execution. I think is kind of just saying it. I think it's just a smart way of saying, yeah, we've kind of sucked. Like
yeah,
you catching a ball is lack of execution. So I get what he's saying. Like he doesn't want to come out and just say, okay, the offensive line isn't blocking, which has definitely been better recently. Well, they've actually been pretty good. The receivers can't catch balls. The running backs aren't seeing holes. We suck. Like it's just a nice way of saying that. So I don't think he's trying to hide it. I think it's just kind of the smart way of saying that, yeah, we've been underperforming. I don't know if you see that any different way.
yeah. I think that's just a professional way of saying the players aren't playing good because sometimes, as much as you want to blame the coaches, like and these coaches this year for this team do deserve some blame,
Mm-hmm.
especially in I think defensively in this game, LaFleur at times, but sometimes you don't win games because the players don't play good. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah.
And the coaches aren't going to come out and blame the players, but they watch the film and they know that they're losing games because the players just aren't executing. So that's the most professional way to go about it. And in this game specifically against the Falcons, I think this was definitely the most execution based poor offensive performance, I think, specifically on Wilson's part, because plays were there, whether it was a downfield, multiple downfield shots were open, screenplays were called in great spots and had space, and Wilson couldn't hit easy
Yeah,
throws on those. So
the RPO
this
bubble, the
was,
Crowder was wide open for what would have most
yeah,
likely been a touchdown.
yeah. The throw to Moore, those pass interference, open for a touchdown. Davis, the deep shot, which he wasn't even close on, open for a touchdown. So, I mean,
Yeah, way too far inside. Yeah, and like the Jets
yeah,
just make it hard. Like I think like the perfect example of a play where like the Jets are just making it hard on themselves, where they can't shoot themselves in the foot like this, is I forget, maybe it's the first quarter. Zach Wilson making checks to the line, whatever's happening. He's looking to the left. McGovern snaps the ball too far to Wilson's right. He taps up in the air, has to find the ball, reset his feet, rolls out to the left. Crowder does a good job getting open, but he catches the ball and then drops it. And then wait, there's an illegal shift. Like all in the same play, there's four problems on a 4-yard completion for a first down. It's like what it shouldn't be this hard. And we'll get to LaFleur in a little bit for sure. But and there definitely is things to blame with LaFleur, but you look at like you're talking about like just player performance, like the offensive line blocks that first game against the Panthers, we probably win. That Patriots game, I'm not saying we win the game to see how our defense would respond to their offense, putting on stepping on the gas a little bit more. But Wilson doesn't play bad that game, we win. The Broncos game, I don't think we win that game, but if the receivers catch some balls or running backs catch some balls, it's a much more respectable game. So while LaFleur has been an issue, and we'll get to those issues in a little bit, some of these plays are not being executed. The post wheel concept to Elijah Moore, where Elijah Moore drifts a little bit too much towards the sideline, and Zach Wilson doesn't lead him properly. It's out of bounds instead of being a touchdown. Like there's so many plays that are on the film that are just not being completed. There's another ball. I forget exactly what the coverage was. It was like inverted 2 and they ran like a vertical in a seam. I believe that's what it was. And the seam is open, and Zach Wilson looked to be looking there. I forget exactly what game it was. But because GBR gets blown up so quickly, he can't step into the throw and throw the ball. So now
oh
you have a
yeah.
perfect call on a seam route versus cover 2, but because a player didn't execute his assignment, now Wilson can't get rid of that ball and that'd be a touchdown.
Is
I
that the
think it
one
was
to Barrios at the end of the Patriots game?
It might have been Barrett. It was either the Patriots game or the Broncos game, which was relatively early.
Yeah.
But I remember just seeing, perfect call versus cover 2, but it wasn't executed because of a GVR. I want to get to the super chat real quick, and I'll go back up to the top. Girth Brooks says, "Good work, boy. Love the show. Let's go, Brandon." I don't know. I don't know who Brandon is, but let's go. Thank you, Girth Brooks. I don't know if you want to clarify who Brandon is. I'm Joe and he's Michael. So unless there's a Brandon in the chat, I'm not 100% sure. And then Mule is talking about some things to fix the offense, which we'll get to. Matt Loviano says shouldn't have paid JFM in my opinion. I guess it depends on kind of how you look at it with JFM. He's a legitimately good talent. I know he's pretty high up there in terms of like pressures and hits. And last game wasn't maybe the best example of that, but he still played well. Now it's a risk you don't sign him because again, if he gets, how many sacks does he have now? Like 3, 4, whatever it is. And let's just say, okay, over the rest of the year, you 3 times 3, 3.5, whatever it is. That's like 9, 10, 11 sacks, most likely this year. Now, does he get, $16, $17, $18 million? If you're looking at a guy in Leonard Williams, who's a similar age when he got paid, who wasn't as productive through his career and got like $19, $20 million from the Giants. So there's always gonna be that team willing to shell out for edge rushers. So I think the Jets have had so many problems at edge rushers since John Abraham left. And I'm not saying he's John Abraham in his prime, but he's a very solid edge rusher. So I'm comfortable with them paying him $13.5 million at this point. And again, now you're locking down a core of 4 guys for the next couple of years. That's a really good defensive line in terms of Lawson, JFM, Q, Rankins, and don't forget maybe guys like Vinny Curry coming back. Huff being there. Maybe Lawson's back as a role player next year, not a starter. Like there's, I'm talking about Shaq Lawson, not Carl Lawson. By the way, I think Carl Lawson would be a little bit more than a role player. But do you think that they should have maybe some buyer's remorse, or like how do you see that situation? Because I do agree with them paying him. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that contract for sure. And a big part of it too is the positional versatility. The fact that you can go forward and, whatever happens on the interior, on the edge with Huff's development, Foley's contract, Rankin's coming back, whatever. And, he can play defensive tackle for you. He can play on the edge for you. So I think there's a lot of value in that, knowing that, he's now proving to you he can play 2 roles very well. So I think that, it's definitely a worthwhile contract. And in terms of, because it is, I think, for a lot of fans who are on the casual side, probably caught off guard by, $13 million a year for Franklin Myers. A lot of fans probably didn't even know who he was. I'm talking about very casual fans, not anyone who's listening to this right now. But his pressure numbers, his hit numbers are like, they're elite. They are. And the sack numbers are starting to catch up to it. 3 in 5 games is really good. He had, I think, 1 in each of the last 2 games last year. So I think
the one game with 9 pressures this year too, which was a lot.
Yeah.
He dominated that game.
Yep, against Tennessee. So he's totally worth that money, in my opinion.
Yeah. 2K is talking about people talk about paying Foley and not paying Foley, and he's completely right. No matter what side the Jets fall on, whether they trade him or let him walk, you're gonna have the people who say Joe Douglas is cheap and he should have paid him. And if they pay him and say, oh my God, he's paying a nose tackle $11 million, he was playing 50% of the snaps. So no matter what, you're gonna have people who are not gonna agree with that. I don't think you can get 100 people as a fan to agree with any move, even if it's the most obvious thing in the world. It's just not gonna happen. So there's always gonna be that 10% of people who hate a move, even though a majority of fans do not or do like it. Mula says the cap should go up about 20 million next year. Yeah, it's definitely going to rise, so it's something you should consider, which is definitely a good point. Douglas is using his salary cap money to front load Foley and Quinn Williams with huge bonuses. Yeah, I think it's a smart way to do it. Get rid of the money or kind of dump the money into early in the contract where you don't have a lot of guys to pay, and then hopefully in the future when the Jets are more successful, you've got more guys to pay. Now those guys are on cheaper deals. We were paying other guys, and that's how you build that Super Bowl roster. Which is why you kind of have that window. Mike says the Jets should need to get creative with the cap like Saints and Rams. I don't know how the Saints got out of their cap hell this year without getting rid of everybody, but yeah, it's crazy. They have nobody to pay except Fadakasi and Q. Is there anybody else? I'm trying in the near future. There's not really anybody else the Jets have to pay, right? The only guy you could say is maybe re-signing Moses if they do that. which is another side question. And I'll get to the rest of the chat again. I'm working through a lot of the chat this time because again, there's no game, and I appreciate the chats in here. And I know it's a bye week and there's not a lot going on, so I definitely appreciate that. So I just forgot what I was going to say now.
Moses.
Yeah, Moses. So Moses versus Fant. Do you think that they're both back next year? And if they're not, would you rather keep Moses on like a 1 year, 2 year deal, or would you rather have Fant back? And I know Fant has an extra year on his contract, but you're assuming to get rid of one of them. I don't think they're going to have a $10 million backup. But if you had to have one of them back or both of them back, like what's your feeling on that going forward? Because like I think at this point you have tackle at right tackle. That's a question mark, obviously, in terms of who's going to be playing that spot next year, who's going to be manning that spot. McGovern's been playing better, but he's kind of like, we need to see more consistency from him. We need to see him play the rest of the year like he's playing now. Then maybe you can convince me he's back. Right guard's obviously going to be replaced, but there's a couple of questions on this offensive line that obviously aren't going to be answered for quite a bit. So what are your feelings on the tackle situation going to next year? Obviously it's going to be Becton. And I would assume one of them are back. Maybe both of them are back, but I have more of an inkling that it's only going to be one. So if you can only have one, who would it be at right tackle next year?
Yeah, for me right now, I think I'm leaning towards Fant. I think both guys have kind of leaned towards one phase of the game. I think Fant's been really good in pass protection, but the run game has been lacking. They've missed Becton there. And then Moses on the other side. I think we've seen some really good run blocking from him, especially on down blocks, which we expected from watching him in Washington. But pass protection, I feel like Moses has had some issues. I mean, Von Miller beat him up, which you expect, but
yeah.
The next couple of games too, he gave up some pressures off the edge. So I think I'm going to lean towards Fant just because he has, he was the Douglas's big investment, the guy who we bet on. He has some chemistry with the other guys in this line. He does have that two-side versatility, the extra tight end versatility.
Which
so
a lot of people are mentioning that with.
I'd lean towards Fant.
A lot of people are mentioning that with Fant, like, oh my God, I can't believe he switched sides like that easily. He made his money playing the left side at the end of that the 2019 season with the Seahawks. That's where he was playing the best when the Jets signed him. That was the plan initially for him to play left tackle because they didn't have anybody else. And obviously, Becton falls to us, and we pick Becton, and we want to keep Becton where he's comfortable at. Who, by the way, is not moving to right tackle. Who is not moving to guard. I've seen that floated out. That would be idiotic. The Jets to move his position because Fant's playing okay there. Like you're hoping Becton could be your left tackle for the next.
He has to change positions because Greg Van Roten fell on his leg in the first game.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. I see my friend Tom in here. He's saying, I'll be there. Tell him J1. To the guy who's asking about a tailgate. Yeah, J1, Jets bus. Tom's always there. I can't go. Hopefully Tom is on his best behavior. He knows what I mean. If you met Tom, I don't know if you remember him, but he was in Carolina too. But Tom was not on his best behavior against the Titans. Let's just say that. So Tom needs a bounce back week. So I think it'll be more of a mild tailgate than it was last time. Let's not forget Geno Smith. Mike, I guess he's talking about him fumbling. I saw he had a couple of good throws and obviously, strip sacked by TJ Watt late in that game. And I was sweating that game out too, because obviously we want them to lose. And I get like maybe not being like maybe an asshole or sinister or whatever the phrasing is you want, but like I have absolutely no issue rooting against the Seahawks, the Panthers, to lose every single game the rest of the year. Like I could not care any less. Like that's exactly what I want. But people out there like, oh, I'm just rooting for Darnold. It's fine if they win some games. Like why? You don't want the first pick of the second round with the Panthers? Like ideally, I'd never root for injuries, but okay, at this point, the Seahawks are like shit, in a couple of weeks, they lose 3-4 more games, 5 more games. Like let's just shut Russell Wilson down for the rest of the season. There's maybe a little setback. They finish with the first overall pick, and then the Panthers, I don't know. Darnold keeps playing like Darnold is without CMC. It's crazy. Like people are like already like, oh my God, look at Darnold with a new OC. Look at Darnold, this new team. You take away Christian McCaffrey, he's just a check down Charlie a lot with CMC. And now look how he's playing. Like that's all they did against the Jets was just CMC, and a couple sprinkled in nice throws, which any NFL quarterback's going to make, especially a first round pick, third overall. Like it's going to happen. But I'm rooting for them to lose every single game. I don't know why people are so like kind of like maybe like soft and saying they won't root against other teams. But I root against every other team in the Jets. There's no team I like. Like I root so hard. Like and it's just there's random teams too. Like the Browns. I hate the Browns. The Giants, the Pats, the Dolphins, the Bills. Which by the way, Nanya, the Bills. I could have won like $370 if they won that game.
Yeah.
Actually, it would have been like $333 actually, because I cashed out one of my bets. But of course, the one time on like a 7-team parlay, I freaking have the Bills and I'm rooting for the Bills to win. Of course they lose. That's just my luck. You just assume they're going to win against the Tennessee Titans, who the Jets just beat. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, the receivers. And again, my kind of argument to that is we'll look at the Jets injuries as well. But nonetheless, people won't bring that up on ESPN because that doesn't matter. But yeah, that hurt. So moving on, rest of the chat, May Stang. Now that's another thing we didn't touch on, which Jets gang. Thank you for bringing that up because I forgot about that. He's just said in the interview, I forget exactly what it was. I actually fell asleep, thank God. But he was saying that he wants to be here. Do you think it's a possibility? Now we're talking about a lot of caps and what guys will stay for. Which, by the way, I saw somebody say 25 guaranteed for Foley. A Jersey dude said that. But over how many years, Jersey dude? So I would like to know what your price is per year. But with May, is it a possibility that he stays? And what would you be looking at if he were to stay?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, the biggest thing is I don't think any stock should be put into what he says at a press conference because there's nothing else he would say other than that. So I don't know if that really changes my perception on his odds of staying at all. But in terms of whether he does, like I just find it very hard to picture because I feel like they had a perfect opportunity to do it this summer. He had his best season in terms of production and all the numbers he had going for him. He was healthy. And they didn't do it. They clearly weren't even close to him in terms of the numbers. So I just have a really hard time seeing it play out because I think once he does get paid, he's probably going to be in that upper echelon of safeties, 12, 13 maybe per year. There were even reports that, and I don't know how that they gauge that because, he didn't go in the open market, but apparently they were saying that teams were going to pay him that money that he wanted. So, I think he is going to get paid in that, Kevin Byard, Tyrann Mathieu, Eddie Jackson, those type of guys, Justin Simmons.
Are you willing 14, to pay
15? I'm not, but I think he will get that money, and I don't think Jets will go there. For me, I'd probably say 12.
I was gonna say 12 too. That's a good. Yeah, we're good. We're clicking with the numbers right now.
Yeah,
12. Yeah, because like I think Marcus May is overrated by fans, I really do. I think he's more solid than like great. It comes with the uncertainty around the safety position right now too. Like you have Ashton Davis, who have no idea what he is going forward, still really raw. Obviously, Joyner's on a 1-year deal. Unless you're comfortable with Gerard Wilson or Sheldrick Redwine or whoever else going forward. It's a really thin position right now for the Jets, and minus right guard, it's probably the biggest hole they have going into next year. So I think you can get Marcus May on, a 3-year deal, $12 million a year with like 26 of it guaranteed, so he has like an extra $2 million if they cut him after 2 years type deal. Like it's always a little bit over the per year. I feel like the guarantee through those 2 years. So I'd be cool with like 3 years, 36 million, 26 guaranteed. I think it's a contract that I think a lot of fans would say is okay, but you're talking about like you're saying $14-15 million. I wouldn't be cool with it, but obviously you would want to have a sit down with Marcus May, and neither you or I are going to have that. But kind of cut the bullshit a little bit with all the DWI stuff. And I think he's been a little bit of like, for a lack of a better term, like a sourpuss in the interviews and stuff like that. So let's see if he's going to be like that Joe Douglas type guy, So yeah, I think it's about 12 million would be okay. So moving on. Mulis saying he hears D Milner as a free agent. Talking about Isaac picks. I think D Milner gets a little bit too much hate. Like, obviously he was injured, and he was injured a lot in Bama. So that's the reason they probably shouldn't have picked him as high as they did. But when he was on the field, I know he struggled at first, but that last like month where he put like, I know it was at least the Browns and the Panthers. I forget exactly who else it was.
Didn't he have like 5 deflections in that Browns game? Something like that.
Yeah, he was really good
against Josh Gordon in that ridiculous season he had.
Yes. And the Panthers game, I think he played pretty well as well. I forget the last 4 games, but I know it was Browns and Panthers. I hope I'm not wrong on the Panthers game. But people like always like shit on that pick, like how bad of a pick it was. And I think if your argument is the injury problems, why he was bad at Alabama, then yeah, I get it. But in terms of how he played, I don't think he was actually bad as a rookie, especially with him seeing lack of times like that because of his injuries. But I don't think really a lot of people care about, 8 years ago, talking about D Milner right now. So I guess we'll move on relatively quickly. Lester Phillip, Sharman says, Joe Michael, how's it going? Having talented players who you are torn about signing is a great indication of how good this GM has been, right? Which I'm sure that's the chat has been talking about that because people hate on Joe Douglas. People not like when we were losing to the Pats and the Panthers, and all these teams, the Broncos, people were hating on Joe Douglas like that. I think it was a stream that you and I did, and we were like trying to defend Douglas a little bit, or maybe that was Kyle. And then the next game, people are like, "Oh my God, Joe Douglas is great. Look at all the cap space we have. Like this is moving forward. We're a young team. We're ascending. We beat the Titans." The next week, people are like, "Dude, the guy sucks." Like after it depends on a win or a loss how people are feeling about Douglas. So I guess that we've kind of been able to sit down a little bit and kind of breathe and look at the situation again. I think it's a lot different with Douglas over Maccagnan and more Maccagnan, but like Maccagnan's teams were old, overpaying people who are not in their prime without a ton of capital, and they sucked being an old team. And now the Jets are young, they suck, but they have a ton of capital. So like that's the main difference. And there are some players to build around here. You know, the JFMs, and I'm not saying that he brought in all these guys, but JFM, which by the way, told talk about how like bad he's a talent evaluator, like getting JFM and Michael Carter and Guidry and Bryce Huff and all these guys is pretty a solid indication. Yes, you're not going to hit on every draft pick. And I think in terms of draft picks, there's kind of going on not like a rant here, it's going in a bunch of different directions. I think a lot of people like live in their bubble, to be completely honest, with the Jets, and they don't really understand in terms of looking at other teams and how successful their draft picks are. Like if you look at any other team, like 50% of hitting on draft picks, and like not even them all being starters, but like let's say if you have 10 draft picks, two being starters and 3 being role players is like a legitimately good draft. Yeah. Over if you look at everybody else's draft classes, the next over the prior 2 decades. You know, people talk about the Patriots and how great they are. Like look at their drafts; they're terrible. So if he in the 2020 class grabs Becton, who's a long-term starter, we'll see what happens with Mims. You know, let's just say whatever, he's a role player at this point. But if you grab Becton, you grab Huff, you grab Guidry, you grab Hall. It might not be the best draft class we've ever seen, but it's not that bad of a draft class. And we still have to see what Ashton Davis is, what Huff, what Mims is. You know, it's like people are a little bit crazy on that.
Yeah, and to add to that point, I think just in general, the expectations of what a team should get out of a draft class are just way too high. I'm looking at this tweet I put up kind of on this topic a couple months ago about the Chiefs, and you know, just as a prime example, because I think the Chiefs are, you know, the most established contender in the league right now. So the Chiefs in 2019, their roster had only from their previous 5 drafts, so from 2015 through 19, had 7 players who they drafted that started at least 8 games for them in that 2019 season. 7 players over 5 years. So that means each draft they're getting 1 or 2 contributors.
Like 1.25.
Yep. And 13 players who played at least 8 games. So, you know, now you're throwing in special teams guys, backups, rotational running backs, receivers, whatever. So now you're getting 2.6, 2 or 3, you know, contributors per draft. So it's not, you're not supposed to be hitting. People, I feel like, evaluate draft classes in the sense that every pick that doesn't work out is a bad
pick. It's
and
terrible,
you should be, it's like you're working down from 100%. Every pick you miss is you being bad, and the picks that you hit are you doing what you're supposed to do, when it's really the opposite of that. If you're getting 2 starters in a draft class, that's great, and then that adds up over 3, 4, 5 years, and you draft 10 of your own guys, you sign 5 guys, trade for 5 more, there's your Super Bowl team. And obviously that's a really easy way of putting it, but you're not supposed to get 10 contributors per draft. If you get 2 starters, 2 role players, good job.
Yeah, I think like a hit rate of like 35-40% would be legitimately good. And like people might think, oh my God, like sitting there like saying that right now. But if you, and then maybe this is like a Michael Nania off-season January, February type project. But like if people go back and look at histories, like and even the Ravens are like one of the most applauded teams for drafting. Like the Steelers, like there's some good teams drafting. But and even go to their drafts and then look at their picks and be like, who is this? Who is this? Did he work out? Did he work out? Did he work out? And you're like, holy shit, like Jets hitting on like 4 or 5 guys out of that 10-person class isn't that bad of a class. And again, we still have to see what if Mims turns into, you know, a solid number 2. And obviously his trajectory is not looking at like that right now. But when he's on the field, obviously we've been impressed, correct? And I say it all the time, and maybe I'm overusing this phrase now, but again, everybody's progression is not linear. I've been saying that forever. Again, look at Corey Davis. First 2 years, bust. Everybody hated him in Tennessee, I'm sure. And now, you know, going to year 5, the Jets signed him. Everybody's like, okay, yeah, really solid number 2. We're happy to have him. Like, I don't think he's been like legit number 1, but $12.5 million for a high-end number 2 isn't that bad of a price realistically. Obviously, the drop's a little bit frustrating, but like, what if he turns into, again, number 3 receiver, number 4 receiver, like a solid contributor, which is on the low end of the spectrum, I think, for Mims. So you're looking at that hitting, you're looking at Becton hitting, you're looking at Guidry hitting, you're looking at Huff hitting, you're looking at Hall hitting, you're looking at, Bradyman as a punter. Like, is that really that terrible of a class where people are like jumping off the bridge about that class already? And you're like, and we still have to see again what Davis is, who I think maybe Davis and Clark. Obviously Morgan's gone. I don't think P. Ryan's going to be much of anything. Zuniga's not much of anything. But now, what if Davis is a solid role player? Like, even a number 3 safety in the 3rd round is legitimately not a bad pick. Like, but in a bubble where you think every single pick is supposed to contribute, then yes, it is. But you're not being realistic about what drafts are and what the normal hit rate is comparative to the NFL. Because I think everybody thinks that every other team makes great picks and everybody works out for them. It's not the case at all. Like, if you had to actually put a number on it, it's probably like what, like 30%, depending on obviously where your picks are, where your picks land. But I would say like probably 30-35% is probably like the hit rate, if that.
Yeah, that's probably even generous. And obviously it's different based on round. Like, I would say first round is 50-50 in terms of getting guys who actually, you feel good about, like, that guy's a starter for us, at least probably 50-50. Then it's probably down to 40 the second round, third round 30. And then day 3 is just if you can get 1 out of 10 of those guys. And that seems, really low, but just scan through the draft every single year. And, you can name guys off the top of your head who are day 3 hits, but those guys are out of the 150 picks in the 3rd day of the draft every single year.
Yeah.
So for everyone, Tom Brady or whoever you can mention in the 3rd day of the draft, there's 10 guys who you never even heard of. So you got to keep expectations low with the draft. Just be consistent, add contributors every year, 3 or 4 of them at least. And over time, Joe Douglas has a 6-year contract. That stuff should add up.
And again, us having like the second highest draft, the second amount of cap space going into next year, not a lot of guys to pay, people coming off the books like Tremaine Johnson with what 10, 11 draft picks. It's a lot different than being old, not having capital. So which Jets gang said, I'm sick of people thinking that Douglas can fix our team in one offseason. Obviously, he tore it down. And I'm not. And listen, there are things that Douglas. I always have to preface this. I don't want people to be like, "Oh my God, he loves Douglas." Again, the backup quarterback thing. Too many rookie coaches. The tight end problem. The right guard problem. There are problems that I see in terms of what he's done. But again, you're not going to hit 100%. But then people mention that stuff, but then not mention again the Huff, the Guidrys, the Michael Carter, the seconds, the picking up JFM from a waiver wire pickup, who anybody could have really grabbed, to now being a guy who is a legitimate edge presence for the Jets, like one of the top, he's not Joey or Nick Bosa or any of these guys, but he's a very, very solid contributor or defensive end. So moving on, Jets gang also says ABT playing better. I don't think he's just playing better. I think he's been playing great for a rookie. The last couple of weeks, he's playing great. That was one thing that I really hitched my wagon to, was saying that his film in college was so good. I just cannot see that guy being bad. I couldn't see him being anything less than average his rookie year, because I just don't see how that couldn't translate to him being good in the NFL. And last couple of weeks, I'm sure you have some numbers or whatever. And just by the eye test, if you're watching the show that they're putting out every week when they play, he's been really, really good. Like, at first he was good in the run game, and we were kind of like, okay, that's a positive sign. He's doing really well in the run game. And now even in the pass game, he's not allowing pressures, dominating in the run game. Like, his fluidity, his hand placement, like everything has been really, really good for ABT. So it's a good sign going forward. And then hopefully Becton comes back in a couple of weeks too. And then you see him, trucking some guys over and throwing them off their feet, and he stays healthy. And now your left side of the line is solid. But and a lot of people disagree with like the ABT move up, but if you're telling me right now that he's going to be a Pro Bowl guard, like, do it every time. I'm fine with that move up. Again, people, and it's like, this has to be like a Madden thing or something, but everybody just looks at like, okay, the Jets have 10 needs next year. They need to fill 10 needs. So they kind of just see positions being equal. Like, okay, if you address guard with ABT trading up to, what was it, 14 or 13 is the same as drafting Wyatt Davis at 36. And it's not, so you want to fill those holes with better players, not just like average players. I don't know why Wyatt Davis is even doing right now, to be completely honest, but that was like the example of people saying like, oh, grab him in a second. But you have to be pretty thrilled with that straight up and how it's worked out so far. And obviously that stemmed from his play through, 5 games.
Yeah, AVT has been great. Like, legitimately, not even just for a rookie. I think he's definitely an above average NFL guard right now. Maybe even better than that. That's just trying to be modest because the run blocking you saw immediately was great. He was
Yeah.
dominant against the Panthers. And then he's kept that going pretty consistently. But, the pass protection, he had some bumps. There was the first game against the Panthers on that, the game, not game time drive, but the touchdown drive they had at the end of the fourth quarter, he was getting beat every single play. So he had a rough start, but then the next couple games got a little bit better, but was still giving up a few here and there. But the last two games and obviously in the stat sheet, he has the zero pressures in the past two games, which is great. But even just watching it, he's backing that up. He's not getting beaten at all the past couple of games. He's been better with his awareness, picking stuff up. The one-on-one battles, he's been not moved at all. And a lot of his reps last game are against Grady Jarrett, Jeffrey Simmons against the Titans, two of the top guys in the league. So that's looking really good. The AVT trade up right now.
I see Green Beans in here too. What's up, Green Beans? All right, I didn't see you for a while because I'm working from the top down in our chat because there's not like we still have some stuff to queued up to talk about, but I want to hit the chat a lot this one because of the bye week. So sorry, Green Beans, I didn't see you. I don't know if you're still in here, but what's up? Somebody's talking about the Dolphins in here too. Which, by the way, the Dolphins, like considering what their expectations were, I don't know if no, that wasn't you. That was Kyle Smith. We went through the roster, and again, that's a great thing about everything being recorded. We looked at that team and I said, like, I don't think they're as good as everybody thinks they are. Now, do I think they're like a 1-5 team? No, I don't think they're that bad. But like people were hyping up this team like, oh, they're like a shoe in for the playoffs. They should be 10-7, 11-6, high as 12 wins. Like people were legitimately saying that like all around, the sports sphere. And I didn't think they were that good, but for them to be 1-5 right now is a blessing because like you look at how they're managing that roster, their decisions with Tua taking him in and out of games, signing guys, getting rid of them the next year with still guaranteed money. Like the Dolphins are looking like a little bit of a mess right now, which is great because we're talking about teams we don't like and rooting against teams. People hate the Pats, and I get it because they've just shit on the Jets for so many years. And people hate like they kind of like they say, oh, they're really cocky. The Jets win they win like 8-9 games. Jets fans are talking shit. Like, let's be honest. So I get them being cocky. I think we'd be probably even worse if we had 6-7 Super Bowls in the last 20 years. But Dolphins fans are the worst. I hate Dolphins fans more than any other fan base in the entire NFL. So to see them playing like garbage is great. Like it's fantastic. So what are your thoughts on the Dolphins so far? Because they were so hyped up this year. Now they're playing like absolute dog shit. So
yeah, I agree with you on that. I kind of have a little bit more disdain for the Bills and the Dolphins and the Patriots, just because we're kind of just so used to getting beaten down by New England. The Bills and Finns are more like equals. So that's kind of how I see it. But yeah, they definitely look like a mess right now. First round picks out the window, starting, your franchise quarterback doesn't necessarily look great. And he did, make some throws in this last game, but he's not in a great spot right now. 22 games into his career in terms of team games. But the Watson thing is definitely really interesting because I mean that would be as much of as an all or nothing move as a team can make because this team is already very all in, picks traded, a lot of cap dollars allocated. So then to invest in a guy like Watson, who's top 5 quarterback when healthy, I think, but has all of these red flags surrounding him. There's a possibility he could get suspended for quite a few games, maybe even, there is a possibility he doesn't play again. You have no idea how that's going to play out. I would love for them to trade for him and then, he gets banned from the league. That would be great.
Yeah. And if, of course he'll go there and like play well. And it's like such a kick to the balls for Jets fans because like now you have Bill Belichick with Mac Jones. Like say what you want about Mac Jones, but he's been relatively efficient for them. You have Josh Allen, and then you add Deshaun Watson. It's like, dude, please give us a break. We have some people Adams talking about Huff's dip and rip move is elite. Yeah, and one of his things, like he has a good burst, and his hands have become much more accurate to me this season. He's added like that swinging rip and some other moves this offseason, which I plan to do. And so I didn't really do a lot in terms of putting stuff out this week, but right after the season, like January, February, March, I'm going to put out a couple of reviews of like some of those guys, like the Michael Carter II and the Huffs out there, and the AVTs and whatever. Like I'm sure there'll be thousands of hours of Zach Wilson stuff out there, but I plan on doing some of those guys. Some people talk about Jamal Adams too. Yeah, it's nice to see him get hit in the face with a ball and not pick it. This guy, like It is great because if there is one player in the league I'm rooting against, it's Jamal Adams every time I see him. I think that's 99% of Jets fans are rooting against Jamal Adams. So seeing a pick hit him in the face and their team right now be, what are they, 2-4? Is absolutely fantastic because
I'm
that guy
curious what you
sucks.
think. Did you see that Kerry Rhodes came out and said that he was the best Jet safety the past 18 years? What do you think of that? Do you think him or Adams was
Yeah.
better at their peak?
So yeah, at their peak, I would say Adams. And I want to preface it by saying like I was watching them, but I wasn't like studying them. So like I was more like a not like a, I guess like more of a casual fan when Rhodes was playing. Because that's when I was like 11, 12, 13. So I'm not really like overly sure in terms of like actually watching him like snap by snap. But in terms of like just my general feeling, Jamal Adams like in his peak play, like those plays against the Giants, etc. That last year we had him. I think he was more impactful than Kerry Rhodes, but Kerry Rhodes is obviously more consistent with the Jets and was with the Jets for longer and wasn't nearly the douche. So I think a lot of fans are obviously going to remember Kerry Rhodes, much more glowingly than Adams. But I think top peak, I think it's Jamal Adams. But now if you're talking about their entire careers, Kerry Rhodes was consistent for how many, like a good amount of years, where Jamal Adams had 3 good years, and now he's looking like, okay, he might be a really overpaid linebacker, who won't shut his damn mouth. So Kerry Rhodes might win that battle in terms of longevity. But yeah, peak, I would say Adams, just being, fair.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was 5 when Kerry Rhodes was drafted, so I can't really say I watched him.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but I
Yeah.
mean, I just think with Adams, and I love rooting against him too. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
The most fun guy to root against right now, and probably at least since I started watching, the most fun villain to root against. But I do think there is a lot of kind of walking back with Jets fans in terms of what he did while he was a Jet, because I think he was the best safety in the league at the time he's traded, and after the 2019 season. I think a lot of people would argue the same. A lot of
Yeah. If
Jets
not, if not
fans.
number one, at least top 5.
Yeah, if not number one, top 5 at worst. But I feel like a lot of people kind of walk back on everything now. But he's bad now. But I think it should just be called fairly. He was a great player for the Jets, but now he's bad. So, and those two
Revisionist
things can be
history.
true at the same time. It's just the
People
revisionist.
always,
Yeah.
yeah, people always talk about that. You're talking about the draft before, like there's gonna be those people out there who I guarantee it, like that random guy on Twitter who's gonna be like, Michael Pirine in the 4th round. That's such bullshit. I knew James Robinson was gonna be good the whole time. It's like, okay, all right, sure. I'm sure you knew James Robinson, who was a UDFA. You knew he was gonna be really good. And we had some people we see talk about Moses over Fant. And in terms of that, which we're not going to delve back into that, but like the interesting thing with that too is you're looking at now. I think we both agree Fant over Moses. One, because he's younger, and I think he's been playing pretty well. Now, how does he play when he switches back to right tackle? Because he is a little bit frustrating at times with his pass sets as a tackle, especially at right tackle. But now we're looking at prices, because if Fant's here for, what's his contract next year, like $10, $11 million, 9 to 11, something like that. If Moses comes back for 5, 6, do you look to cut Fant and then bring back Moses? Like, so that's an interesting topic with that, like kind of side topic.
Yeah, 10.7 cap hit next year for Fant.
And you can get like all of it back, right? I'm pretty sure it's all of it or just about all of it.
Yeah, 1 million dead cap if they cut him.
Yeah. So would you rather have would you rather have cut Fant and then pay Moses that $5-6 million, or have that extra $3-4-5 million? So it's an interesting conversation, which, by the way, again, people were really low on Fant. And that was one of those signings that we reviewed on Jets X Factor. And we said, there's a reason they're paying this guy. Maybe they overpaid him a little bit, but there's a reason that they're paying him, and his trajectory is upwards. Now people are happy with him. Oh my God, he's been playing so great at left tackle and all this stuff. And it's like, surprise, like he's not bad. And people talk about him when he first got signed, like he was a terrible signing, was going to be an absolutely awful starter. And I think he kind of falls around a little bit below average to average, like over a season. But for $9-10 million a season, it's really not that bad in terms of what other tackles are getting. So while I prefer other guys over Fant, he's not dreadful. He's not. I don't think he's as bad as like the Calvin Beecham's his last year here, or the Wayne Hunters, or any of these guys. And we had somebody talk about Evan Neal in the draft. Keep Fant in the draft. Evan Neal, yeah, like I'll be fine with that, to be completely honest. Like, I'm looking to take the best talent. Like, the Jets are not in a position now where they need to kind of fill holes. They just need to acquire talent. So even if you do have Fant on the team next year and you're sitting at, let's just say it's pick 6, and Evan Neal falls to 6 and he's the best player on your board, draft Evan Neal, sit him if you need to sit him. If not, then you play him. You trade Fant because having 2 stud tackles with ABT, with McGovern, etc. Like the draft's gonna be interesting. I would like to not to think so much about the draft going forward. But this year going in with a ton of picks, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, it's gonna be really fun to watch the draft and all the fills or all the holes they fill in free agency, which is why we're always so damn busy in the offseason, because it's like every offseason, it's like 1,000 players are signed, 1,000 draft picks, coaching changes, learning the system, like doing all this stuff. So moving on, both back and find a new right guard. Yeah, right guard's definitely the biggest need. Snoopy's in here again. What's up? Just as a little Jets chant. I hope we're feeling excited for Sunday. I'm much more optimistic with the white on white than on the white on green.
Yes,
going into this game, because white on green in New England, we're going to absolutely dominated. And good grace allowed back into the stadium after being ejected. I don't know what that's referring to. Never mind. Not going to address that. Tom could address that if he wants to. He may or may not have been thrown out. I don't know. Green Bean, I love Joe. I'm exactly like that. Yeah, I don't root for any team. Like I just don't. Like, why do I care? I want every team to suck. Like if every team could just look like absolute garbage, and the Jets are the best team in the league, like fantastic. Like now, do I like to see good games? Like whether it be defensively, I love like those like Steelers Ravens matchups, like in the mid 2000s, or like and I prefer that, or like the was it the Rams Chiefs game, like 54-51, whatever that was, like crazy game. Like I like watching that stuff, but I don't root for really anybody else with the Jets. Like I want everybody to suck.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the reason we're in this is to root for the Jets, that name, that logo, and that's it. And there are good stories on the team who, you root for particular guys on your team more because they have longevity, they have great story, background, whatever. But when they're on another team, it's like, I'm not going to necessarily wish ill on them or anything.
Like actively root for them to tear their ACL, but at the same time,
I'm not going to do that. But it's like my team, which is why I'm invested in this, has your team's draft pick, and for this team that I'm rooting for to get to the Super Bowl, you losing helps us get there. So that's what I'm concerned about. Not is Darnold happy and getting what he deserves and everything. And like I was a huge Darnold guy. I thought he's going to be great for us. But he's not on the Jets anymore, and his team has the Jets own the draft pick of his team. So I would prefer to see him lose and increase the Jets' odds of winning Super Bowl. It's pretty much that simple.
And people like to almost play what's a better term? Like woe is me card for these players. Like, oh my God, like how can you root against me? He's such a good guy. Like, listen, he's getting like $20 million over a couple of years. He's going to be fine. Like I know people who are great people working on minimum wage and who can't afford cable. Sam Darnold would be fine if he sucks in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
and also every single week you root for the Jets to win. You're rooting for 53 guys on that other team to lose. We don't care about their feelings. So it's
and in terms of like Darnold too, and I think it would be more easy if like you were like not a content creator, but like me personally, like interacting with all these people every week and whatever. Like again, appreciate everybody's in here. 104 people in here. Like I really do appreciate all the support we do at Jets X Factor a lot. We're new, and a lot of people have really come out and supported us. But when I'm interacting with all these people, it's like I'm more prone to root against the guy who's been on the Jets previously than root for them, because then guess what's going to happen if Sam Darnold plays well? How many Sam Darnold questions have to answer? And I'm just sick of it, So I'd rather just have him suck and nobody want to talk about him. Like,
exactly.
I don't care, D had 2 really good games. Y2K says that. Assassin, what's up? Adams is a failed pick. I wouldn't say so considering what they already got. No, he turned from a sixth overall pick to 2 firsts and a third. Like that's not a failed pick at all. You got him for a couple of productive years. He was the leader of your defense. He won you probably a game or two a season, maybe. And then you didn't pay him and you trade him for a ton of capital, and a lot of that capital now turned into AVT and then their pick next year. So what if you lay on 2 starters for Jamal Adams, who right now is a glorified linebacker playing safety, who literally his best chance of catching an interception is if the ball slips through his face mask and gets stuck there, like it's freaking like Charlie Brown or some shit. Like he's not going to catch the ball. So Jets can think Ravens hit on their picks. Yeah, they do. But still, even with them being the top organization in terms of hitting our picks, go over their draft history and like see how much are like legitimate picks. What's up, Friggle D? Moving through. AV2 is a perfect pick where they got him. Yeah, he's Y2K saying you're so right, but I'm so back in the chat that I'm trying to catch up. We're about 20 minutes in the behind, so I'm gonna just breeze through this. Green Bean saying he loves JD so far. We undervalue the magnitude of the year down. It's been scrubbed completely clean to start over. We never do that. Yeah, this is the first like true rebuild, getting rid of a lot of the old shit on the team. So moving on. Want you guys out of here. See ya. Do you agree with this? Snoopy says if Zach is a bust and Mac, Lance, or Fields emerge, JD is toast. What do you feel like? Like, do you think that this because you're assuming that Douglas is tied with Saleh, and you're going to give Zach Wilson at least 3 years. If Zach Wilson's a bust after 3 years, do you think these guys can survive? And especially considering Woody Johnson, which was the most like fraudulent like post game interview or like a speech ever. Like, this is the best moment of my Jets ownership, like them winning one game and going at that point 1-3. I was like, what? Like, not, playoff wins and all this other stuff. But nonetheless, do you think there's a chance they survive if Zach Wilson's doesn't work out?
Yeah, I think because looking at it that way, like you said, we're probably looking at 3 more years of Wilson. So say he's here through 2023. At that point, Douglas has had, count out 2019, 4 full seasons of teams that he built. So at that point, if Wilson is, say he's really bad, he's a bust, and they have to get rid of him after 2023, and it's obvious. I think the only way at that point that Douglas can stick around is if they have a really good infrastructure. The rest of the team is doing great, almost like, just one of these teams that's great defensively and, has good offensive line, good skill positions. Everything's working except the quarterback. If that's the situation,
yeah, I
think they can be okay. But, if they're losing games and they're really bad and still other things aren't working and it's time for Wilson to go, then I think that could be the point, where they start over again. Hopefully, I don't really like talking about this right now. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But I think he can stick around past Wilson if he builds the rest of the roster well.
I don't know if I could take us drafting another high quarterback and having to go through all these ups and downs. Wilson just needs to work out, because I really thought it was going to work out after year 1 with Darnold, and then year 2, we tried to convince ourselves, I think, that he was working out better than he was year 2. Like at the end, I was a concern. Like we barely beat like a banged up Steelers team. We barely beat a Bills, like a second string team. Like we were there. He was struggling, and
I think looking at 2019, he had that 4-game run that I think was really good. The Giants, Washington, the Raiders, and I think he was good against the Bengals, even though that was obviously a terrible game. I think there was a ton of drops. He's really good in that game. So he had a good 4-game stretch there. But then, and that generated a lot of hype for him. That was, he was starting to improve. But then from there, he had that last quarter of the season where he wasn't that good, and we kind of overlooked that. The Dolphins, the Ravens, I think he's pretty good against the Ravens. He had some good plays, but then the Steelers and Bills games, Steelers had a good defense, but the Bills were playing their backups. In those 2 games, he was bad. I think we did kind of overlook that last quarter of the season and kind of hold on too much to his hot streak in the middle.
And then I was out early in 2020, like on the Jets in general. Like I've watched enough games. Like I'm 28 now, and obviously there's people in this chat with much more experience than I have. But like, I remember getting really pumped for that Bills game, and like the Jets return it like on the first play of the season, so like the 40-yard line. And there's like a holding call, and they go back to the 15. I'm like, nope, it's just not going to work. It's just not happening this season. It just is what it is. And then Darnold, like the first 2 weeks, looks like crap. I'm like, nope, it's just he's just not it, But there's a lot of reasons tied into that. But Green Bean says Lamar Jackson might be a starting safety by season's end. Thoughts, Mike or Joe? It's always a possibility that he can move there and maybe perform well, but he's never played there before, so I wouldn't bank on that. Like, is it possible? Sure. Like, is he a slower corner? So maybe, not having to match up and press bail against a receiver or whatever it may be. Maybe he's more successful in that role. But if I had to say yes or no, like bank on it, no. But any other thoughts on that? Not any of them will move back through the chat.
Yeah, I agree. There's the possibility of it just because I think he is good size. Like you said, maybe because of the lack of athleticism, he fits there better. It's a possibility. And they're so in such a dire, especially if they trade May in such a dire spot at the position, that they could start dipping into the practice squad, seeing if they could, even more scrappy guys or whatever. But like you said, I'd probably bet against it just because he hasn't played it before, but it's a possibility.
Yeah. Greenman also agrees that the Fins are the team he hates most in the AFC East. Just go to a game with their fans and hear them talk about how successful the Dolphins have been. Like, they are the most cocky fan for not winning anything. Like in how many years? Like they are beyond cocky and annoying. I hate Dolphins fans. Chris Reynolds is talking about people that don't see how good Joe D has been. Just don't know. He just doesn't know what to tell you. Yeah, again, there are some issues, and I'm not like on my knees for the guy, but overall, like I'm happy. And I think again, a lot of people look at the results, they look at Sundays, they look at the stats, they look at all this stuff. But like if you look at the process about how he went through everything, while you may not agree with everything, and I don't, I know you don't, I know the 90 other people in here don't. But overall, I think a lot of people are happy if you really break down move by move what he's been doing for the Jets. And you have to consider where they're going. Again, cap space, draft picks, tear down, and we have some pieces moving forward that we're excited about. Mueller says he lives in Miami. He hates the fans, but if they get Watson, they'll be doing Tua dirty. That's a conversation for a different day. Devil's about to start. Yeah, I know. I got to watch on illegal streams because apparently Xfinity don't have MSG. It doesn't have MSG anymore. So I was super pumped to watch the first game of the season. And then I go to click it and it's like, oh, not compatible with Xfinity. I'm trying to find illegal streams. Couldn't freaking find it. And I missed the first game. I had an update for stats. Super chat from Mike Galiza, $10. He was saying another great show. Mike's always throwing out the super chats. Mike is rolling in money because every week he's just throwing out super chats. So I always appreciate Mike. So definitely appreciate you, Mike, and thank you for always tuning in. Jets, yeah, Snoopy says Jets fan just got rid of Brady for 20 years now. It's Watson and Allen. Yeah, and Mac Jones too. Like, he's been pretty solid. So let's see. Blitz Boys, what Barstool is calling Adams. Yeah, that's been around for a little bit. Rhodes was soft. I liked him, but didn't love him anymore by the time he was traded. Yeah, again, I was relatively young, so I wasn't like crazy like in terms of watching the Jets. Love the white on white. Okay, moving through here. Evan Neal with our first pick. He can play the entire line. I don't know about center though. Do you have any knowledge? Can he play guard too? Like again, and I always preface the draft so like, oh, can we draft this guy at the end of the first round? Like, do you like him? I preface it by saying like, initially, yeah, maybe you watch him on broadcast, you like him, but obviously we like to dive into stuff like that's what we do. So like generally, I could speak on a guy, but I always preface it by saying I really want to watch him. But if he can play guard, then fine. Like I'm not so crazy in terms of like the positional value. Like you have people like saying, oh, you need to draft a corner, you need to draft a tackle in the top 5 or 10 or whatever. But like if Linderbaum's legit like one of the best centers we've seen in the last 10 years, and he's sitting there at 5 or 6, I'm fine with taking him. Like Quentin Nelson, but 6 overall. I'm sure there's people out there like, oh, guard at 6, like over. I guarantee there's articles out there. Oh, overvalued. You can't draft a guard in the top 10. I would say he's worked out pretty well for the Colts. So if you could take Neal at 6 or 7, and again, based on his traits and et cetera, if he's a good guard, then I'd be fine with that. Like, I don't know if he's ever played it though, so I don't really know much about him. He's tall as hell, right? He's like 6'7". I don't think that'll probably work.
Yeah, I agree. Like same thing to draft stuff. Just I always wait for the season to end, then dive into everything more at that point. So I don't have too much draft knowledge right now, but I agree with you in terms of I think the draft is when you focus on best player available, and free agency and trade market is when you fill your holes because you have a little bit more certainty with what you're getting, and with veteran players who have been in the league. So that's when you could patch your holes, and then in the draft is when you kind of build your foundation and let your foundation build itself just by getting the best talent, the guys who have the best odds of succeeding, regardless of where your positions of strength are, because things change quickly in the league with injuries, guys declining, and everything like that. So you really don't know what no one thought cornerback was going to be the Jets' best defensive, or one of their best defensive positions on the whole roster at this point. Things change really quickly. So I think in the draft, when it's such a crapshoot, you just got to stick with your board and take the guys who you think are the most talented, barring, if you have like the Jets can't draft any defensive tackles or edge rushers. Edge could be on the table, but unless you have like a significantly log jammed position, I think you have to, stay pretty faithful to just taking the best player available.
It's all dependent on like what's available too, like, and where your rosters at that point. Like if the Jets were to draft a first round running back this year, like let's say, the Seahawks pick which it's going to be higher than this. So let's just say for sake, it's 23rd and they draft the highest running back in the draft, like I would lose my shit. But if the Jets now were a playoff team and like we're one piece or
running
two
back
pieces
is an
away,
exception in the first round.
unless you're unless you're
Unless you're
going
like a Super Bowl caliber
exactly,
team in the
which is
30s,
why
high 20s.
I love Najee Harris, but for a Steelers team with a dog shit offensive line and a quarterback who is most likely going to retire, like for that to be your pick, like I don't agree with that for them, you know. But like now, let's say if the Bucks drafted a running back, like okay, fine, you know, like whatever. But it all depends on the situation too, because they used to look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the Chiefs, and they needed a ton of offensive linemen and defense. And they drafted a running back. It's like, what are you doing? Like you know, you're getting by on, and we're seeing that this year on Mahomes, but like their defense is garbage, like and it has been for a little bit, and their offensive line has been addressed. But moving on, we're almost caught up. We have some Bart Scott hate in here. People saying he's overrated for the Jets and he was bad. But then Stewart brings up he's the greatest Jets quotes of all time, which by the way, when the Jets put that out, like them asking questions in the parking lot, like people like, oh, who said can't wait after the Patriots game? They're like, how are you even going to games?
We bullied them into deleting that.
yeah, they got bullied into deleting that one too. Like, how are you going to Jets and you don't know who said can't wait? Like, are you kidding me? Like, people are bringing up like random. I was like, what is this? What is this? And I think they screwed up something else too, because they said who was the last person to have like 2 touchdowns on opening day. And they said it was what's his face, Keyshawn Johnson. And it was really Stephen Hill against the Bills, right? Unless the Bills game was week 2, but I think it was week 1. And he had 2 touchdowns his first game, or was that week 2? I think it was week 1, so they got that wrong as well.
I forget what was happening.
They said
I know Davis did it this year though.
I believe the question. Well, yeah, but they said who was the last? I guess before Davis, who was the last Jet to have 2 touchdowns on opening day, and like no, the answer
he did. That was
Johnson.
The first game. Yep.
And it was really freaking Stephen Hill. So even the Jets asking questions didn't know what the answers were. I was like, this is a mess, man. They gotta get rid of this. What's up, Eagle? Neil could play guard. Okay, yeah. If he's there, you know, I'd like to evaluate that. But typically, guys who are 6'7" aren't great at guard just because your center of gravity. You know, you have some of those, you know, guys going against like the Aaron Donalds of the world, the guys who are like 6'1" and they get into your chest and they're under you like that. It's really hard for you to anchor. So length usually works out because you're in space on the edge. Inside, length isn't as important. It's important, but that's more about, you know, leverage and quick hands. And overall lower strength to me than length, you know. But God, I hope we beat the Bucks. I can't stand the chance Brady does us like Aaron Rodgers did the Bears. Yeah, what did he say? Aaron Rodgers said like I own you to the Bears fans.
So, I still own you.
Yeah, I still own you. Jordan Battle second round. Do you think Bart Scott was overrated, by the way, quickly before we get to some of the other stuff in the queue?
I think overrated in the sense that he's a superstar player. But I think he was good.
I think he was solid. So let's be controversial. So I'll give my 2, just because we're talking about overrated Jets. I think that in history, DeBrickashaw Ferguson, minus him being healthy forever, which is obviously a great trait. Him and David Harris are largely overrated by Jets fans. Like they think they're like Pro Bowl, all pro players. Like maybe Brick was like a Pro Bowl-ish player for a couple of years, but like David Harris never made a Pro Bowl. I'm not just saying that's, you know, why he isn't good, like because it's a popularity contest, but the guy couldn't cover for shit. Like, yeah, he was good in the run game, but half the game he wasn't good at. So I think those 2 guys are really largely overrated by Jets fans. I don't know if there's really anybody else who's there's probably a couple of guys who really go through the list, but those are 2 guys I feel that are really overrated. Do you agree with that? I'm sure that people in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, just like the Jets fan, we as Jets fans have such a tough history that we don't get a ton of guys like that. I mean, there were at this point in time, but the past decade it kind of fell off, but there aren't a ton of guys who you could really hang your hat on for like a decade plus, start every game, like those 2 guys. So there's always that longevity bias, and durability bias is another big one because fans hate any player who gets injured, even though they can't do anything about it. So those 2 guys have that going for them, and they were good for sure. But you know, is David Harris a Hall of Famer? No. Yeah. Is Brick? It'll be. Nah, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, like you said. But you know, I think it definitely applies to both of them. For me, I'm not sure. Like the Jets have been so bad in recent memory that's hard for me to think of a player who's overrated. Although that could help players get overrated.
I would say Curly's an underrated player. I think people underrated Curly. Who overrated David Harris? I think people just in general talk about he's like a Pro Bowler. We had a super chat from TJ Decker, and he asked about it up or down the chat. I'm just going through the chat just by order. So he says, what's up with LaFleur saying he hasn't given the tight ends enough chances? Yeah, I saw that quote. I don't know what context it was in today, but we talked about this before. If anything, the tight ends need less chances. We need to see more 11.
Much less chances.
Much less chances. More 10 more 11. And I get like having Croft in there. I think Croft like is again like an okay number 2, but when Croft was out, like that, whatever that game was, the Falcons game, like still seeing Griffin a ton is like, what does he provide to? He's not threatening anybody. So, and that's been one of my biggest problems with LaFleur is, and we'll talk about some of that, is that he's a little bit too like concrete and like, okay, this Shanahan system, you need 12 personnel, you need 22 personnel. This is how it's built. This is how we're doing it. And again, ideally, that is how it is. 2022 Jets, you draft whoever, you sign whoever, Dallas Goedert or whoever going into next year, then sure, that's fine. But you have to play to your talent at a certain time. So even though that system doesn't go 11 or 10 heavy personnel, at least as heavy as 12 or 22, whatever, he needs to adjust to the talent they have. They have a lot more talent at receiver than at tight end. Like, I'm not breaking any ground here. So yeah, that's been frustrating. So I don't know in necessarily what context that was in, but yeah, that's a joke. They need to see less time.
Yeah, for sure. And even like with the changes in the offense, like I'm not expecting them to totally overhaul the offense and start running 11 personnel the entire game next week. All I want to see, because like we get it, this is Shanahan's system. 12 is a big part of it. And, not improving in the offseason is a problem for another day. But, that's the core of this offense. So I get that you're not completely abandoning it, but you can tweak the offense to a point where, you're just maximizing your talent a little bit better. And just looking at the numbers of it, just decreasing 12 personnel by like 10% to 20, 25% instead of 35, 40%. That'll knock you down to like league average, and then push 11 personnel up 10, 15%. And that's a minor tweak that could just make you have them maximize their talent a lot better. So it doesn't have to be a drastic change, but just a slight tweak to the talent that you have would be pretty good coaching.
Yeah. We have some people talking about overrated and underrated here now. We have Mike saying Rhodes or Wilkin were overrated. We have somebody saying Rhodes is underrated. And then we have Mike continuing to say that Sean Ellis is underrated. Ellis didn't he had like a quote when he went to the Patriots, like he never felt at home with the Jets or he feels at home with the Patriots, like that. Like, it really turned me off about him. And then we have Eagle, who say he put me on the spot and asking Nick Mangold over or underrated, putting you on the spot. I think he's like properly rated.
I think so.
Like he was always really, really good. Like I think Ferguson it was always like a top 10-ish left tackle, but people talk about him as like one of the best left tackles in the league. Where Nick Mangold for like that 5-6 year stretch, he was legitimately like a top 3 to 5 center very consistently. So I think people were properly rating him. Like he's a Pro Bowl level player. I think he deserved it. Yeah. Moving on. To let's see if there's any other chat to get to. No, not really. So let's keep talking about the OC. So what are like your main gripes with him in terms of like problems? And shout out to them. I'll shout them out because I know they listen, or at least one of them listen. The Jets UK pod, I was on there for an interview the other day or like a week ago. They posted it. And one of the questions that Andrew asked me was like some of the problems with LaFleur. We talk about the offense a little bit. So what are some of your like main gripes? And then we'll talk about ways to fix them as well.
Yeah, I think they could be a little bit less predictable at the beginning of the game. They have the highest first down run rate in the first quarter of the season, 71%. So, which I understand the thought process of easing your rookie quarterback into the game, but they haven't been running the ball well. They're not the Titans. They're not the Browns. So I think a better balance, and they could still be, fairly run heavy relative to the rest of the league, but to that extent, I think it's a little bit too much. So a little bit more run pass balance in the first quarter, I think, can help Wilson get his rhythm, especially on first down, can help him get his rhythm going instead of, consistently he's throwing his first passes of the game on 3rd and long. And it's hard for him to, get into a rhythm when on first down, it's easier to kind of plan out what we could do ahead of the game and, scheme that up. So I think more first down passing would be good. I'm going to go with the low hanging fruit here. I think more Denzel Mims snaps needs to happen. And that doesn't mean I'm saying he should start, but I kind of mapped out what I feel like they could do with the receivers in terms of the snap portion. So this is what they did against the Falcons. They had Davis 80%, Crowder 61, Cole 55, Moore 41, Mims 14, Berrios 11. I think that the best way to map it out, keeping it around that same amount of receiver snaps, maybe a little bit more, because I think, like we said, a little bit more 11 personnel would be good. I think they should do Davis 80%, Moore 70, Crowder 50, Mims 40, Cole 20, Berrios 5. And Keelan Cole would be the victim there, which is unfortunate because he is a very solid player. But I think at this point, it's worth taking the upside play with giving Mims those snaps instead of Cole, because even with Cole out there, it's still been a pretty awful offense. So I think it's worth taking that shot in terms of giving Mims more snaps. And like I said, 40%. I'm not asking to play the whole game, but just splitting snaps with Crowder based on Crowder's more of your third down guy, Mims more on early downs, red zone. I think that's something they could do as well. Other than that, I think less of Ty Johnson on third down. That's a big one for
Yeah,
me.
I
There's too much
yeah.
asking him to block, too much asking him to run routes. I don't understand that. It doesn't
Mhm.
fit his skill set at all.
Yeah, yeah. And you definitely made some good points. And even with like Mims too, like, and while I do want them to be, and you highlighted, I think, I think it was an article you're talking about like them running a lot on first down in the first quarter, which is again, you have guys, you have like 15 Nanias on every team studying stats and then telling the coach, hey, this is their tendencies. You should probably watch out for this. And they take that into effect with their play calling. So if we could figure that out, NFL teams know that, and they will game plan for that. So they got to change that. Some people in the chat talk about some more guys are underrated. Yeah, Leon's underrated, and I spoke about running backs before too, and I wanted to mention that. Like, it depends on where you are getting your life cycle, but like Najee Harris running behind a bad offensive line, injured offensive line, not a smart idea. The Jets, I think we convinced ourselves it's a great signing because we've been so talent deprived, like superstar talent deprived. But then you look at the team, a patient runner behind a shit offensive line, and not a good idea. But yeah, going with LaFleur too, like I think in terms of, and I wrote a couple things down, like Wilson being under center too much. I want to see him more in shotgun. That's where he's more comfortable. He did that more at BYU. I don't like them trying to make him like a drop back pocket quarterback. I do want to see some more design rollouts and things like that. And they've been doing a lot of, I don't know why, but teams are really keyed in on the Jets, like running a lot of nakeds. I want to see them roll out like bootlegs with protection. And there's difference into like naked bootleg. It's just that blockers move out with a bootleg versus a naked where you have nobody. That's how it differentiate. So I want to see more of that. I want to see them getting him going, like you said, with like the short early early downs and early in the game. Get some slants, overs, like the simple stuff. Just get him in a rhythm. Like he's a rhythm guy at this point. Hopefully that breaks after a couple of years, but he kind of rides the waves at this point. It seems like a little bit. So just get him kind of in structure and feeling it first instead of running it, being 10 and or 10 and 2 and 10, 3rd and 11, and then forcing him to throw the ball deep or intermediate when teams know they have to throw it. Like not getting him going that way. The lack of motion. Early, the last couple of games, I think he's picked up a little bit. I'd have to like chart it and see. But I want to see more of that. I want to see manufactured touches for more. Again, you have a guy in Braxton Berrios who's taking jet sweeps and end rounds. And you have a guy in Elijah Moore who that's like one of the main reasons he was brought in, like a jack of all trades, like electric with the ball in his hands, but you're giving the ball to Braxton Berrios, who I think we'd agree that Crowder's probably better with the ball in his hands more than Berrios. Now, if it was Jeff Smith playing and because he can throw the ball, maybe I'd understand it. But yeah, the lack of manufactured touches for Moore. Throwing mainly on first down the first quarter, which you mentioned, and they will know that the lack of 11 personnel and it's just been bad. I broke out these stats. I think the last time I did the show, but 13 total points in the first half this year through what? That's 5 first halves the Jets have. They have 13 points in 10 quarters, and then with that, they have 79 yards in the first quarter through 5 games. 79 yards. It's like an absolute joke. So yeah, I want to see the more manufactured touches. I want to see more shotgun. I want to see the short passes. I want to see less play action because this is something we talked about too. Is he's struggling with play action right now, Wilson, and people always just automatically assume play action is great for a quarterback. Yep. Maybe for a quarterback who can make quick reads and Matt Ryan and Tom Brady out there. But what's the main thing it does? It takes your eyes off of the defense for that second and a half. So you have a quarterback who's struggling a little bit with processing because everything's moving faster and he's swimming a little bit. Now you're taking his eyes off of that defense for half the play. And now he has to make even a quicker decision. So get him in gun, let him see the defense as he's carrying out that fake and play action. But the whole single back play action, taking his eyes off to the defense, is much different than gun play action and letting him scan the defense, scan the middle of the field as he's carrying out that fake. Like there's little things I feel like he could do. Is there anything we're missing with that, you think? Or I'm sure there's some other things that we're not really thinking about, but.
Yeah, I really agree with that last point, and the numbers back it up. He's averaging 2.1 fewer yards per attempt on play action versus without it this season, which is the biggest drop off in the league. So second largest, Davis Mills, another rookie, has a bigger drop off. But yeah, I totally see that too. The play action is a lot of the ugliest stuff we've seen this season has happened on play action. I think long term you do want him to be a big time play action quarterback because it fits him physically. Get him out on the move. where he's, can make those throws in space, establish the run game and the scheme once you get tight ends who can actually block, and be able to take those deep shots,
Or a
which we
right guard
know.
who could block. Yeah.
Yeah. And so long term, it makes sense that I think they want this to be a play action heavy offense. But right now, Zach Wilson, 5 starts in and, 4 picks in the second game, rattled by that, leading the league in picks. It's not valuable to have him taking his eyes off the defense, especially when you don't have a run game that isn't that much of a threat right now. So I think the play action has certainly been counterproductive. And that doesn't mean, again, just like the personnel, doesn't mean you never call play action, but just call it less, make it less of a focal point. And, time it better. There are good times where you can still pull it out and take your shot plays, but especially in the last drive of this Falcons game, he was calling play action when they were down by 10 with 2 minutes left. It's a complete waste of time.
Who is that faking out? Like they're playing in soft zones. So now you're going in soft zones and taking your quarterback's eyes off the defense. Like it didn't make any sense. And like I said, yeah, I think he'll lean more into play action. He's more comfortable, but again, get him going. And even like with the Mims specifically and like just deep shots at the start of the game, like Wilson can throw a ball legitimately 65, 70 yards, like crow hop into it easily. Like where are those deep shots? Because how many deep shots in the NFL now are there pass interferences? Like you look at the last game with Elijah Moore, which by the way, did not like that decision from Wilson because I think there was somebody else. I think
Davis was wide open.
Davis was wide open and over, and he just never looked at it. He was staring at Moore the entire time. Or even the Davis play with the Titans where he forced it to Davis. I think Cole was open on that one too, where he just struck the ball up. But guess what? Both brought pass interference. So you're both opening up the defense by, oh, holy shit. Okay, yeah, they're going to be aggressive. They're not just going to stick to their, run on first down, play action, all that stuff, where they could sit on a little bit more. Throw some deep shots to open up the defense. Throw some deep shots to draw some PIs because they happen all the time in the NFL. So, yeah, they need to change some stuff, and hopefully they went into the film. Not hopefully, they better have gone to the film room. Saleh better sat down with the floor and said, okay, what's working? What are the analytics? What are these numbers? What are people keying in on? Okay, first down, they know that we're running it. They're keen on this for the first quarter. We have to change it up. Next play, run a dagger concept, whatever it is. They have to change it up because it's been way too predictable. And you may have your certain staples of an offense you want to go to consistently, but when they're not working, you have to change. And I think it's almost a little bit overstated. People say you have to adapt to your talent. And while I do agree with that, I think people think that you could just change an offense like right away to do that. But at the same point, there is a middle ground where yes, you 12 heavy in the system, but again, your talent's at receiver. So run more 11. It just is what it is. Jones looks like a Chad Pennington or Kirk Cousins. Maybe Belichick can win with that. Wouldn't put it past him. He won with Matt Castle, so if he can win with Matt Castle, I'm sure he can win with Kirk Cousins. Seahawks play the Cardinals two more times. The Rams, 49ers can easily lose 10 games. Yeah, we hope so. Yeah. What's your gut feeling? Where are the Jets sitting? NFL draft 2022. Yeah. What are the Jets picks in the first round?
I think the Jets are going to be right around where they're at right now. I think they have 6th right now. I feel like they'll be right in that range. They'll win 5 or 6 games. So maybe I think they'll win 6 games. I still think they're going to. So that would be a 5 and
1.
So they'd be 6 and 11.
One below the over under at 6.5, of course.
Yeah. So I still see a 5-game finish. 5 more wins. They have a soft schedule in the middle. So we'll see where that puts them, 6 to 10 range.
Yeah.
Seahawks, I feel like they'll win one of these next 2 games. They got the Saints and Jaguars at home. I feel like they'll take one of those. Yeah. Then they got the bye week, so Wilson gets extra rest. Kind of tough coming out of there. I'm looking at their schedule right now. It's not like I just remember their schedule.
Yeah,
at Green Bay, Arizona, at Washington, Seattle, or San Francisco. I guess it just depends on Wilson's recovery. They're saying some people are saying week 10 he'll be back, so only 2 more games missed. Some think it's more than that. I think they'll end up winning 7 or 8 games, so they'll be in the middle of the first round.
Now, I'll never root for an injury, but can I root for a setback in his surgery? Like it's a little
Can
sore.
you root for him to make a smart business decision and be safe about his body?
Yeah, we have
that's what we're rooting for.
We have a 4th and 12th in here. We have a 2 and 15. We have a 6 and 12. I'm going to say the Jets finish with the 8th pick because they win 5-6 games. And I think the Seahawks, they finish at 15.
Yeah.
15. 8 and 15. Which ideally the Seahawks pick is number 1, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Russell is my favorite QB, but he plays with the ship and could ball. Yeah, Wilson's good. Okay. So talking about the trade deadline a little bit too, before we wrap up and take some more questions if there are any. We have about 17 minutes left of a hard end time because I work midnights and I have to sleep a little bit before I go to work, so that's why that happens. But next couple of weeks I should be able to do it better because my schedule rotates and whatever. But nonetheless, nobody cares. Is there anybody else on the trade deadline you're looking for before we wrap up with this? Because a lot of people talk about Howard, but we had a person here talk about Cody Ford as a right guard. Is there anybody out there who we're like looking at who's potential trade? The problem with offensive line is like people don't trade away, good offensive linemen. So I don't think that's going to happen. The Jets aren't in this position where they're really looking for stopgaps. So is there a guard out there? Is there a safety? You have to kind of look at the bad teams with guys who might be in their prime, like looking to get paid, and maybe they're just trying to dump guys. It's kind of a hard situation because people just don't really just dump guys in their prime, regardless of the situation. Again, you're looking to trade for whoever it may be, a Marcus May who's 28, 29 years old if you're the Bucks because you're going for the Super Bowl, but the Jets obviously aren't going for it. So I don't see a ton of options to be completely honest, but I don't know if you're more aware of what's out there for potential trades.
Yeah, well, in terms of O-line, the only guy who really comes to mind is LDT from the Chiefs I mentioned earlier, Duvernay Tardif, just because, and like you said, teams don't trade valuable players. But I think the exception with the Chiefs is that they have ridiculous offensive line depth. They have a backup offensive line that could start for a lot of teams. Not that it would be good, but they have guys who have started games the past few years. Mike Remmers, Allegretti, who was starting for them, Wiley, who's starting for them, Blythe, who was starting for the Rams. So they have a whole starting offensive line on their backup unit. So they are kind of overflowing. LDT is going to be a free agent next year. So I think that is an opportunity. And also I mentioned the Chiefs as, a possible May destination because the Chiefs really, really need defensive help, especially at safety. So I think that is a possibility just because, he's an impending free agent. You have plenty of offensive line depth. Get something for him while you can. So that's a possibility I do think makes a lot of sense. Other than that, though, it is kind of hard to find teams who would actually give up an offensive lineman who's worthwhile, for the Jets, especially if it's a rental. But in this situation, I feel like there's a pretty good incentive for both sides. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. I do feel like that is something that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe like the Zach, like people talking about like Zach Ertz. Like I could get it if it's for like a late pick, and like there's the argument of like, okay, do you do it to help out your quarterback just to like aid his growth and then get rid of him, next year? So it's like that middle ground. Like, okay, he's not a long-term piece, but if you can help him his rookie year, like what's that soft spot in the middle, So Dallas Goedert was a guy who was rumored, but obviously they're getting rid of Ertz. I don't think they're going to get rid of Goddard. But then again, I think it's his last year. So if they're not going to sign him and they know they're a rebuilding team, which I don't know why they wouldn't sign him, but nonetheless, I'm more leaning towards offense, the guards, the tight ends out there, because listen, they could take their lumps on defense this year and push their capital or push using their capital into next year. Like those long-term pieces where if you're going to tell me, okay, they're going to trade for a tight end like a Hayden Hurst, even though he fumbled the ball twice versus the Jets, like one of those pieces to help out Wilson for this year, like I'm more okay with that. But trading future assets, hopeful long-term assets for short-term fixes on the defense doesn't make sense to me. But offense, obviously, I could do that. Now with the Jets, a lot of people talk about Crowder as well, getting rid of him. Cut his contract was like $5 million. With Crowder, do you look to trade him? What's your feel on that? Or with Crowder being 28 years old and being a guy who I think is a relatively smart route runner, so he doesn't like thrive on athleticism. Would you look to extend him? Like, do you look to trade him? Do you look to let him walk, or do you look to extend him? Because at this point, listen, like, yeah, the Jets are a bad offense, and Crowder's on the team. So what does he mean to the offense? That's a shit argument in my opinion. Because he's a reliable slot receiver. Like he's at the minimum top half of the league slot receiver. I would argue top 10 slot receiver when he's targeted. Like he's a very, very good player. So do you look to trade him, or maybe you sign him next year and then you go into the season with, Mims more, Davis, maybe you get rid of Cole because you're on a 1-year deal and you draft a guy in the 4th round, I think Crowder, people are, it's a foregone conclusion to him that he's gone next year, but I don't think that's the case. I think they could see him maybe back.
Yeah. And just to talk about what you're talking about earlier, like Jets win, Jets lose, how it changes everything. I feel like after the Titans game, everyone was talking about extending him, and now one bad game and it's time to trade him. But there are good arguments both ways. I have to be honest, I don't have a strong conviction either way with Crowder, because I think trading him does make sense if you want to open the door for Mims. If the team, is confident enough in giving him that playing time, open some more snaps for him, get something for Crowder if you're not planning on bringing him back next year.
Mhm.
And sort of on the point with Foley, if you're keeping Crowder long term, it doesn't seem like he'd be getting too many snaps because you have Davis, you have Moore. Hopefully, Mims develops. So I can see both ways because, like you said, he's definitely a worthy talent. He's only 28. He doesn't play an athleticism based game. And I
Mhm.
haven't seen anything to suggest that he's not a borderline top 10 slot receiver still. So why not have as many weapons as you can? I think it really just depends on how the team feels about, where they sit with the other receivers on the team, specifically Mims. Um, you know, if they're not planning to bring Crowder back next year, then by all means trade him. But going forward, like I would have no issue because what the Jets have right now at receiver, even though the points and the production hasn't been there, is really valuable because they had those injuries at the beginning of the year at receiver, and they could still throw out competent lineups. And that's what we were excited about, the fact that they
Yeah.
have so much depth that they could be banged up and still have guys to throw out there other than Andre Roberts, Sharon Peak, Rashard Matthews, whatever. So I think there's a
David
lot of value
Nelson in
to
the
that.
past, and yeah.
But I think Crowder too, if he becomes a free agent, I think some team will pay him decent money. So
That, and
um
he's probably looking to cash out too because he's 28. This is the last like big
yeah,
contract he's going to get. So again, with bringing numbers into it, Crowder wants this per year. This is the maximum Michael Nani is willing to pay him per year for the next 2-3 years. We're assuming it would be like a 3-year deal, 2 of a guaranteed, most likely. What would be your number? And this is considering he went from 10 to 5, but now the cap is jumping up. So like, what's your number? I'll throw mine first because we're usually
yeah,
pretty
go ahead.
close on numbers. I would say like right like 7.5, 8. I'll be okay with
I was gonna
because
I was gonna say 8.
yeah,
So
because like people again, I think people see Braxton Berrios has 7 catches for 50 yards and Crowder have 7 catches for 50 yards, but they're not the same, and specifically what play maybe it was the Broncos game. Crowder still wasn't playing, and Berrios is running like it's either a corner or an out route versus like bail coverage with outside leverage, and Barrios like sees the outside leverage and sees where he is and just takes his route directly into the corner and just kind of like patty cakes with him. So he just ran his route where it was supposed to be without adjusting to it. Where a guy like Crowder's a little bit smarter. Okay, he's outside bail on me, run him up the field a little bit, undercut him, and then if I have to drift those next couple of steps to get to my spot, that's fine. But Barrett's running a route, and I have to get there. But he's in the way, so I'm just gonna run into him. Like it's just like little things like that. That's not necessarily the best example. I brought up on the film review I did with that Broncos game. But little things like that, like getting open, catching the ball, yak. Like Crowder's a much better player than Barrios. So if you can bring him back for Wilson next year, because listen, is Cole back? Let's just say he's not back. Because do you bring both guys back? Maybe not. But if you go next year, Cole and Cole isn't back, and then you have more Mims and Davis. Now one of them gets hurt, and now you're looking at a guy like a Barrios, seeing a significant amount of reps. So yeah, Crowder, like 3 years, $24 million,
yeah,
16 guaranteed. Like
yeah.
I'll be okay with that.
Thinking about it more, I definitely think that they shouldn't trade him because of that short. We talk about trading for a right guard, trading for a tight end because of the value of helping the rookie quarterback in the present. Crowder helps that too. And if you trade him, a lot of that depth goes away and you're playing more Barrios and dealing with some of the issues you talked about. So I would keep him around, play out the season, see how Mims develops, see how Crowder continues to play the rest of the year, and then evaluate after. And I think you can, say Mims continues to not fit into the lineup and this regime just doesn't like him. This coaching staff doesn't see a fit for him. Then re-sign Crowder. You feel comfortable about $8 million a year next season. And that's your starting 3: Davis, Moore, Crowder. That's plenty solid going into next year. So I would lean towards keeping Crowder around to play out the season,
Yeah.
evaluate it after the year. And I think there is a scenario where re-signing him does make sense.
Yeah, it's like for me, like I want them to either like shit or get off the pot with him because like I don't want him to walk away for nothing. Because a lot of people they kind of tend to say, okay, we'll let him walk for a comp pick. You have to understand like the formula, which I don't think anybody really does, but like
Yeah.
generically, like okay, it's based on who leaves and who you bring in, and the Jets are going to be buyers, so you're not going to get a
Yep.
comp pick. So either trade him or sign him. And I think people are like foregone. Okay, he's gone because like he's just like the average slot receiver to people, but I don't think people realize how good he is. And how reliable he is. Like he is where he's supposed to be for Wilson. And like that play that he made in the Titans game, like that catch deep down the field with those Barrios with that players that slipped through his hands. Like it slips through his hands. He doesn't make that catch, like, so I'm
The
okay.
touchdown that Crowder caught in the Titans game, I don't think Barrios makes.
hits his chest and it drops to the ground. Like it's just he's reliable. So we have a couple more minutes. Franz Clamor saying I want to see Elijah Moore returning punts if we can't get him more than 3 touches per game at wide receiver. Yeah, I'm cool with that too. Like just get him the ball in his hands in the open field. Again, manufactured touches, end around, jet sweeps, screens. There hasn't been enough. There's only been 2 manufactured touches all season. One led to a concussion, and one was like a 3-yard loss against the Panthers. And now you're seeing guys like Barrios get end arounds, and it is a little frustrating to me. Now, quickly before we get to the just to wrap it up, is there anybody else you think you would trade on the Jets? Is there anybody else you're thinking about? We talked about May. We talked about Crowder. We talked about Foley. Those are the 3 big guys that people are talking about. Is there anybody else you can think of that like you might get rid of for some trade or for some draft capital?
I think May would probably be the only guy. I'm trying to think if there's anyone potentially expendable. I'm not sure if they really have that depth anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I think Morstead maybe could be interesting because the way he's been playing, Man's coming back.
Yeah,
I'm just saying as maybe a throw in, like if they trade May, maybe you get a conditional 7th or something thrown in. I'm not looking for the world, but they do have
if they could get a 7th round pick in like 2026 for him, I'd be cool with it. Like I don't think they would be trade. Maybe it could happen, but moving on. Expectations going forward. I'm not really. We don't have to really. I guess we can. Well, let's go with the Pats game first, and maybe expectations going forward, depending on where we land. You're going against the Pats. Obviously, the Jets played very well. The Jets team minus Zach Wilson played very well against them week 2. You have Zach Wilson's a back-breaking 4-interception game, but the defense was playing relatively well. And again, with the defense, and by the way, last game was super frustrating in terms of how they played on 3rd down. Like, why are they zone blitzing on 3rd down when they've been a man blitz team?
What did you think about
year?
those comments from Saleh? He's like, oh, we've been doing it all year, but this game we got beat, it didn't work. Now we look like an idiot. Yeah, I think he's totally copying out there. They played differently.
Yeah. So like I haven't really seen JFM, and it's not necessarily like, okay, yes, you're going to see you're going to see Huff or JFM dropping in a coverage, like walling off a drag route, like whatever it may be, like a short coverage. But how much emphasis are you putting on them? Like to put JFM on Kyle Pitts when he's their biggest weapon in the red zone is a misstep. You just can't do that. Like, so certain times in the game, having him cover Hayden Hurst on 1st and 10 at the 34-yard line. Okay. That makes more sense than putting him on, man to man with no help against their biggest weapon who's been dominating all game or early in the game. So that was okay. That frustrates me. The other thing that really frustrated me is, again, the Jets are a team who's bend but don't break. They're hoping they can stop the run and rally to the ball on 2nd and long, 1st and long, whatever it may be, to get you in those situations where it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 on 3rd down. And then what do? They send some more pressure. And they man up. They press to let the blitz get there. This game, similar situations. You're playing against a quarterback who is a quick decision maker, a smart guy, if nothing else, and you're running blitzes with zone drops behind it. Like they have like a zone. I forget if it's a cover 6 or maybe they were like coning the number 1. I forget exactly what happened on the Falcons play. It's like 3rd and 12, and you're running zone. With a blitz. And it's like, if anything, just let these guys not think. Like, that's what man corners like. You don't think. You have a young cornerback group against a vet quarterback who's been in the Super Bowl, and you're running zone. Like, it did not make sense at all with them running zone. So that really, really frustrated me this game. So I don't know why they got away from it. I think they outsmarted themselves. So that was definitely frustrating to see. But going to like the Pats game again, the defense, while I think it's been definitely impressive, like where they're at with their corners, getting Quincy, like they've been solid. But we do have to consider the Broncos game, they were getting blown out. The Pats game, they were getting blown out. This Falcons game, they're getting blown out in the first half. So while the defense has been impressive, if these teams were trying to put it on the Jets a little bit more, if the offense is more, average or okay, defense might put a little bit more on the Jets. But I still think they're better than they played at that Falcons game. And with that, you have to consider, 100 reps against Derrick Henry and playing overtime. Yeah, you're going to be a little bit slow, but the concepts didn't make sense to me. So that was frustrating. But with that being said, New England, just competed against the Cowboys. They played another close game before that. I forget again.
Yeah, the Bucks.
The Bucks. You're going into Foxborough. They're 0-4 in Foxborough, I believe.
Yep.
which, by the way, crazy amount of home games your first couple of weeks. That's kind of wild. But do they go 0-5? Do you see them having a shot? I can tell you with the white tops and green pants, I thought the Jets were going to get blown out again.
Yeah,
I did. But with the white on white, I think they legitimately have a shot. So kind of what are you expecting in this Pats game, and what are your expectations going forward? We'll kind of lump it into two, and then we'll get to the chat really quickly. And I got a 8's kind of a hard stop time for me.
yeah. I think the biggest thing is Michael Floor. Can he adjust from that last game? Has a bye week to look back on it and just give him a better chance compared to last time. Because I think last time he had a good game plan. He was ready for them to be aggressive, but that didn't happen. And then he didn't adjust in the middle of during the game. So I think that's the biggest thing. And obviously Wilson played really bad, but still LaFleur didn't do a good job in that game. So I think he needs to be not necessarily from a game plan perspective, but just be more willing, be more prepared to change it within the game based on what Belichick throws at him.
Yeah. Well, so you don't give score predictions, but what's your feeling? Like, do you think it's a touchdown game? Do you think the Pats win? Like, you don't have to predict the score, but if you had to bet, which I need to stay away from this week, I always try to make up my losses the next week and I lose even more. So I got to be smart with that. But
I got to be careful because I can do it now. So,
well, you're in Jersey now?
I'm not in Jersey, so I technically can't do it. But being 21 now.
Yeah, casinos and stuff like that. Yeah. It does suck when you travel. Like, I remember I forgot to lay down some bets, went to Carolina, and I was like, damn it, because they search your location. If you're obviously in a state you can't bet, you're not allowed to bet on your phone. So unless you have a VPN, just saying.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? Do you think they win the game or they lose the game? We have Fran saying Pats 24, Jets 13. We have a Carmelo who put the score backwards. You psychopath. He's saying New England 20, Jets 23. I forget who did that a couple of years ago. It was one of the beat writers who would list the offensive line from right tackle to left tackle. I'm like, what is wrong with you? It's left tackle to right tackle. You read left to right. But continuing on, throw out your scores if you have any scores in the chat. There's 78 people in here. And Nani, I know you don't give them, but what's your feel? I'm gonna go.
Yeah, I don't feel good about this one for the Jets. I don't think they'll win. But
and then going into the Bengals game, you have the Bengals, and then who's after the Bengals?
Colts.
Okay, Thursday night in Indy. Yeah. I'm going to go Pats 23, Jets 17.
Yeah, I will give a score. I'll go Pats 27, Jets 16.
Oh, 11 points. Yeah, that's a little rough. But again, going into Foxborough, them being 0-4 in Foxborough.
I feel like it'll be close though. Like they'll score a pull away touchdown at the end, but it'll be competitive.
And people kind of talk about the Pats having like a down week and all this stuff because they just played the Bucks and the Cowboys well. But you have to understand, you can read about it, articles, whatever it may be. Bill Belichick has a legitimate hatred for the Jets franchise. And he will break out everything to beat the Jets. Like, losing to the Jets in Foxborough eats him up. Like, when they did it, the last time they did it was 2010. But nonetheless, I don't think it's like a trap game for them because they've been playing good teams. So I think they lose. I think it's relatively close. I think Wilson looks better. I hope that LaFleur adjusts. And again, not to cop the Jets out, but if they play a more competitive game, they're in the game. The offense plays well. The designs are better. The run game, if it's all coming together and they just lose to Bill Belichick and Foxborough, I get it. But we don't want to see, Zach Wilson look like he did against, the Pats last time, or the Falcons, or any of these other games. So let's see if there's anything else in the chat. We have the 28-14 by Damian. We had somebody to talk about Kenyon Green, I think, in the draft. Yeah, if they could draft Kenyon Green with the Seattle pick at 15, that'd be fantastic. But I guess that's it. Nani, do you have anything else to close out with, or any words for the viewers or listeners out there?
I guess the only thing is that Woody Johnson is listening, so go ahead, try to bully him. He might do what you want him to do. Yeah,
Damien, real quick, gentlemen, do you think LaFleur ever go up in the box? If he's comfortable with it, that's where he should go, in my opinion, because if he can see the defense better. But appreciate everybody, and we will see you. I'll see you on the next film review, and I'll see you next week with Kyle Smith.